Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast that looks back at films from our youth and asks the question, is that any good? Sometimes, Chris, when we ask that question, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into. Because occasionally, Chris, we have a film, like, I don't know, just plucking a random film out of midair here, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, where it's actually quite easy to understand how your memories may be tricked, because there may be several good scenes in the movie, but maybe the movie isn't very cohesive. So when you've not seen it in a long time, you'll remember the good scenes, but not really the stitching, so to speak, that brings those scenes together. And then you watch it for the first time in quite a while as an adult and go, God, it's a fucking mess, isn't it? Does that sound familiar to you, Chris, as an experience? I mean, I guess you hadn't seen it originally, so I guess maybe not quite.
No, I had another weird experience, which is like I watched this like, oh, this is the beginning of the downfall of the Hollywood blockbuster sequel. I go, okay, like, and I'm sure there's been bad sequels before this, but like the tropes, like do the same but bigger and sort of all the rest of it, and also. And I feel really bad about this because it's such a harsh criticism. Arguably even more than any other film we've done on this show.
Yep.
I was just watching this movie like, this is a dumb movie. Like, this is dumb.
Yes.
This is really, really dumb.
Yeah.
And it's not just the third. It's not just the third. Well, I would, third or fourth act, depending on how you want to.
Yes, I've got this in my notes too. I love that we've come to the same conclusion. I've literally got in my notes complaints about this bolted-on fourth act. Yes, we'll get to that, but go on.
Yeah. It's not just that. There's loads of stuff. But like you say, there are some good scenes and there are some good ideas. And I would argue somewhere in here is a good movie.
Somewhere. Yeah.
But
like a fossil that you've uncovered, you've got to be very delicate when you brush off the bits of dirt, and you've got to reconstruct it well if you want a good movie. And unfortunately, they dug it out with a JCB. So
yeah. Absolutely, but let's do. So you remember going to see it in the cinema and thinking it was all right, or?
This is one I did not see in the cinema. So, funnily enough, despite the first Jurassic Park being my very first cinema experience, when this one came out, I was so excited. I remember the bus ads, I remember the marketing, but at that point, we had moved to Ireland. And there was no way my parents were taking me to see this. Not because they thought it was inappropriate, they just didn't care. Like, they didn't want to see it themselves. We were not going to see it. That was that. It was that simple.
Wow.
Yeah. So I begged and pleaded. This movie was not happening. So I had to wait for this movie to come out on VHS to see it for the first time. And when I finally saw it, I just loved it. I was, I think when you're a kid, you're way more amenable to just like the explanations given without judgment. That seems a bit contrived because you just want the result, right? Like, I want them back on the island of dinosaurs. The guy that's absolutely saying he's not going back, they're just like, your girlfriend's there. He's like, I guess I'm going. Okay, I guess so. Why are the dinosaurs still around? Yeah, life finds a way. Okay, cool. There's a second island. Cool. You just go along with it. So young Dan didn't care because the result was lots more dino fun, and I don't think young me was very critical of that stuff, because why would he be? I don't think I ever thought it was better than the first one. I will say I always preferred the first one, and if I had the choice of the two, I would always watch Jurassic Park before I'd watch The Lost World Jurassic Park. But if it was on, never a bad time for young me, because I just loved the world, and I loved these characters, and I like dino action. There's also one sequence in the middle that I do, well, not even in the middle, but in this movie that I still think is one of the best sequences these films have ever produced. It's not quite surpassing the T-Rex attack from the first one, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close, and that's the RV sequence where it's being pushed over the edge of the cliff. So much brilliant tension and great shots, and just really cool ideas in that. And I remember feeling that was a very creative sequence when she's lying on the glass and all that stuff. We'll come back to it later, but yeah, that stuff's good. But yeah, no, just genuinely had a really good time watching it as a kid, which made this very frustrating as an experience because I could see all of the things I enjoyed happening one after the other. But again, it's like instead of being fed a cake, someone made me eat eggs and flour and sugar individually. I was like, maybe you should mix these ingredients together and bake them. That's really what this experience felt like. It was very unpleasant. I'm assuming since you'd never seen the first one, you have absolutely no history with this film, and this is like completely blind going into it. Did you have any like cultural osmosis of this film? Like, did you know anything about it?
I knew it wasn't. I knew it was considered to be not very good. I knew that people didn't like it. It's really weird. I have no real gauge on whether 3 is even worse. I just know 3's reputation from the meme, from the Alan bit, and that just seems mad. But that could, for all I know, be one really dumb thing in a bad movie. But yeah, I've got no sense for which is considered worse. Although I think 3 is considered.
I think 3 is considered worse, but I'm actually going to be curious to challenge that, because one thing that from my memory, I feel like at least 3 is a more coherent. Sorry, I mixed up coherent and cogent. I think 3 is at least a more coherent, straightforward plot. And like execution of its ideas. I don't necessarily think it's a masterpiece because it's doing the thing this movie's doing, which is, dance again, put that same song on again. It's very much, doing the hits, so to speak. But I believe the plot at least makes more sense.
Yeah. No, I had nothing going in, but was really enjoyed, as people that have listened to the last episode really enjoyed Jurassic Park on the rewatch. Yes. And enjoyed it before, but had an appreciation for the movie, gained an appreciation for the movie that I'd never had before. Mm-hmm. So I went in quite excited to watch this, and so to let's go in and start reviewing, and sent Dan a voice note, just in tears of laughter at the thinness of, there's another island. There's an island we were testing on, so there was an initial island. Yeah, still got dinosaurs. I've
got questions about that, just practical ones, because what he says is that was the island they were breeding them on before they then moved them as attractions to their island, which on paper you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that actually sort of makes a lot of sense. You breed facilities. You might need more space or different facilities in order to facilitate that. So you move them over. Okay, yeah, all right, I'm on board. Then you go, wait a minute. In the first movie, they were clearly breeding them on that island because we saw the eggs and we saw them hatching them. So that explanation doesn't really work, does it? Doesn't work at all.
And this is what I mean. I think one of the movie's biggest flaws is that just a lot of dumb shit happens, and a lot of stuff doesn't. We'll get to Ian. We'll get to Ian. Let's talk more broadly about dumb shit. So it's kind of just as an explanation, and I laughed, and I'm still sort of that's the very beginning, and I sort of just I think there's enjoyment in my voice note to Dan. I'm not offended by that. I think it's dumb. I think it's funny. And then Ian's back, and they make it clear that he'd never go back, but he's got a girlfriend, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's a character change, and again we'll come back to Ian's character change. But then the daughter stows away, and you're like, oh god, you can see where that's going. Just because we don't have to have a kid on an island, okay. And then Toby Ziegler shows up, and I'm quite happy, and I'm like, hey, it's Toby Ziegler. And then Vince Vaughn comes up, and I'm like, hey, it's Vince Vaughn. And I say to myself, I'll make that a bit. I'll call Eddie, played by Richard Cliff, Toby Ziegler, because he was Toby in The West Wing, and maybe I'll call Vince Vaughn, and then I realised, Vince Vaughn doesn't necessarily have that one iconic role that everyone knows him for. And I think about Vince Vaughn's career
because he
he
really disappears into his roles. Chris, I think is one thing we all know about Vince Vaughn.
I tell you what's really funny is, right, I looked, because, with most actors, you look them up and it's like, and their Wikipedia is like, the first lines is most notable for playing X in Y, right?
What does he say? I'm so excited. Because I've got to assume they're just going to go on gross and it'll be something like Dodgeball. But go on.
This is the opening of Vince Vaughn's Wikipedia. Vince Anthony Vaughn is an American actor. He is known for starring as a leading man in numerous comedies from the late 90s and 2000s. Wow. Even Wikipedia can't pick out something for the first sentence.
Incredible. If I was going to pick something for him, I would pick Freaky. He's brilliant at Freaky. I think that is his magnum opus.
That's not even second paragraph. So Vince Vaughn made his acting debut. See, here you go. They're not even acting debut in Rudy, and then he had his career breakthrough in the comedy Swingers. But again, still, they're not. They're just going in chronological order. There's no, he is da da da. So then I pull myself back into the movie, and then shit just begins to fall apart. Like, just so much illogical. Like the scientists who, like, these are all clever. Julianne Moore's character, who's next, Sarah. Of course, it's Sarah because they spend a fair bit going, Sarah. Her job, like, she's an intelligent, smart woman. Her job is to study the behaviors of science. How long, Dan, does she walk around with a jacket covered in blood and not notice and realise? Like, it's just mad. They write around the fact that she, they say, maybe the parent gene is stronger or whatever. Uh-huh. So they write around the initial notion of them taking this dinosaur to save it. But the minute the T-Rexes then showed up and pushed them off a cliff in a bus, you'd think someone would be going, well, maybe they can still track me with this jacket covered in their child's blood.
Yeah, what's crazy about that for me is, like, she's already told someone else off for doing the same thing. Like that happens multiple times in this movie where she'll, like, tell someone off for, like, doing something and then immediately do it herself. Like, don't actually interact with the dinosaurs. Oh, I'm going to pick up this T-Rex. Like, this baby T-Rex. Yeah. Like, it's like the script needed her scene to scene to be different and therefore does that, which is a shame because I think Julianne Moore, who, by the way, I will say, has reportedly, like, talked very fondly of doing this film, had a great time making this film. She always wanted to work with Spielberg. It was a win-win. It also helped to... My favourite thing, actually, I found in the trivia, one of my favourite things in the trivia, was that she mostly initially took this movie on to pay off a divorce settlement.
That makes me... Nothing against her.
So she got paid. Her. She got to work with Spielberg. And, like, she had a great time making this, right? She enjoyed her time making this. And you know what? She's good in the film. She is good in the film.
I genuinely don't think any of the actors are bad in the film.
No.
Like, I think everyone's doing a great job. In terms of dumb shit, so there's stuff like that. Like you say, characters change motivation scene to scene. Characters make really stupid decisions in terms of how they interact with stuff. And then by the time, right, and I'll lay this gauntlet down now, right, Dan? Right. I'm laying it down now. I do not know, and one of the things I'm most excited about next episode 4 is to find out the context of Alan. Yeah. But my assumption is, and especially I have seen the trailer for 3, and I know that one of the things is the dinosaurs are talking to each other. So my assumption is that at some point he has a dream and a dinosaur talks to him. My assumption is that is a dream sequence, right?
Yep.
So if that is correct, I lay down the gauntlet now
Yep.
that moment has become the meme and has become the representation of dumb Jurassic Park sequels. I'm sorry. I think Kelly, is the daughter's name.
Yes.
Like, doing a ballerina swing move and face-kicking a dinosaur out of the room is dumber than Alan. I think that is the dumb moment. And should be the dumb moment that represents the sequels.
It's really interesting you should bring that up, because I for a minute was confused by why this bothered me. Right? Because
it doesn't make any fucking sense. Because we've seen that dinosaur smash through walls and do all kinds of strength. Like, what do you mean? Why it bothered you? She kicks a dinosaur in the face, and it works.
So there's two things about that. So in terms of the physics of it, like she's doing her gymnastics, she's swinging back and forth, and then she catches it in the side, which throws it off balance. It falls to the side, and it goes through a window, so it's out of the building. So it's not that it's hurt and dead; it's that it's gone, like it's no longer present. That's the what they're trying to do, and I think it's not great, and it's goofy as hell, and it looks kind of dumb. But that's less of the problem for me. I'm watching it going, how did she know it was going to jump to that spot? Because what happens is she jumps up. She grabs the thing, and the movie did try to establish that she's a gymnast earlier in the movie.
Had a line earlier.
Yeah, right. And I'll come back to that, because I want to talk about that as well very briefly. But we set up that she's a gymnast, right? So she then does her gymnasticisms. She's holding onto it. She's spinning back and forth. She's building up that momentum. But she's building up that momentum nowhere near the dinosaur. Then the dinosaur happens to jump into her path. That's the bit that breaks my brain. It's the how'd you like dem apples thing of like, you had this line, but you really need to. The other guy needs to supply you the feed line, or you're going to look like a real dick. If that dinosaur had jumped up to a different part of the room to get round, not in the path of her kick, she'd have just been sat there swinging, just like, oh, okay, that didn't work, did it? The same way if the guy hadn't, that if the guy hadn't said, "Yeah, I like apples," Good Will Hunting would have been able to say, "Well, how'd you like them apples?" So, like, it's done for that reason.
And presumably Sarah would have been like, "What the fuck are you swinging about?"
Yeah,
like,
what are you trying to achieve? But the other thing I wanted to talk about very briefly, unless you, it's on the same topic, but have you got something specifically on the practicality?
It's on the same topic. Yeah,
go on.
No, you go. No, you go. If it's on the same project,
it is on the same topic. Yeah. So the thing about I also couldn't understand why I was a bit bothered by them setting it up earlier in the movie, because we complimented Jurassic Park 1 for setup and payoff with the hacking skills for the young girl, and I realized what the issue was. It just doesn't feel earned in this movie, because when the whole movie is about the park being hacked, computer skills helping to get the park back online feels baked into the premise. So it all sort of flows and works together. But one random reference to gymnastics and then a situation being contrived really heavily where gymnastics might be useful irks me to no end. So they don't just get away with it by setting it up earlier in the movie. You've also got to use it correctly. And the situation in which her gymnastics becomes useful feels very forced, feels very artificial, feels very luck-based. And while I guess kicking it out off the edge of that thing through a window is, I guess, theoretically plausible, I've got a lot of things to line up for that to work, and I feel that's very not believable.
And that's not, and I don't want to be harsh, but that's also not taking into account that the setup is that she's not made the gymnastics team.
Well, they turn that into the joke, don't they? Because it's one of my favorite. To be fair, it's one of the better lines in the movie, and it's just purely because Jeff Goldblum is just such a genius at delivering stuff like that. He's like, the school cut you from the team, like he doesn't understand.
Yeah, that's true. But that's the script. It's just full of dumb stuff, and you know we've just named a bunch of dumb stuff, none
of this beats my, in terms of just logic being broken. I've got my one, which I'm going to rant about for some reason, so I'm not going to do it right now. But I've got one that I did research because I was so annoyed by it.
Well, let's. But my point. Well, to finish my point before we do yours is. And we've not even got to the bolted-on fourth act yet of the dinosaur needing to find a water source, so going hunting for a swimming pool. It was in the harbour. What?
Yeah.
What?
With,
it was on a boat.
Yeah.
What?
I
What's
think,
happening?
I think the logic there is supposed to be, obviously animals don't drink seawater, they drink river water because it's not salted. But
Welcome to the world of chemicals. Yeah, welcome to the world of chemicals in a fucking swimming pool. Then.
Yeah, exactly. That's where the logic falls down. So I'm not against if they said it's going for a water source and they found it at a lake or a pond or something where the water would likely be fresher. Moving water, probably a river or something. But dear Lord, the pool. They want it for the visual, and they didn't care that it didn't make sense. That's what's happened.
But I did enjoy It doesn't the ends don't justify the
no,
means.
they don't.
Because look,
I know what you're about to compliment, and I agree.
Yeah, I did enjoy the whole sequence with the family. The way the kid slowly gets up, the way he walks in, and it's so sad. It's one of those things where you know what's coming, but you want what's coming to happen.
Yeah.
And the whole there's a dinosaur in our backyard. Oh, fucking don't be so stupid.
You're having nightmares again, little Timmy.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And can I just say and this maybe we'll try and make this the final shot because it's the final time I'll say the word dumb. For people thinking, for regular listeners going, but you love the Fast and Furious movies, and they're full of dumb stuff. Yes, they are. Now, my least favourite Fast and Furious movie is F9, which is full of the dumbest stuff. So, it's not... I don't forgive it. But I think the trouble is there's not... If this movie had that, but was full of moments like that family and that little kid bringing his mum and dad through, and full of... If that was the consistent tone, if it was the fun dumb movie, I'd be fine with that, but that's not what this movie is doing. And also there is a difference. We've rolled our eyes at the swimming pool, but we're Dan's got his big annoyance of whatever's coming, and I'm really annoyed by the jacket, because there is also a difference between, sorry, take a shot again, but there is also a difference between dumb moments and even like the kick, defying the laws of physics and all of that sort of stuff. But then the jacket thing breaks the character. The character is meant to be an expert scientist on behavior who, like Dan says, has criticized others for similar stuff. Her then doing that with the jacket completely breaks that. So there is a difference as well between them. I feel if the entire movie was the swimming pool, I'd be sat here going, "Oh, that was stupid, but I had a good time." But the type of dumb things they're doing break your brain and stop you from having a good time, which I'm going to use as a lead-in for whatever your rant is about. I'm sure something that fits into that mold.
Yeah, I think there's the difference though between like there's dumb and then there's dumb stuff happening because it's going to lead to, as you said, to a fun moment, and dumb stuff happening because the writer just couldn't think of a better way to make X and Y happen, and he wants X and Y to happen, so he's contriving these horrendous, concocting these bizarre sets of circumstances that don't really work in order to sort of do the thing he wants to do. And the thing he wants to do isn't always like a fun thing that's worth the breaking of reality. There's a scale, basically. How dumb is the thing versus how good's the payoff, and how worth it is it to have the dumb thing. And in this movie, the dumb things way outweigh any of the payoffs by quite a considerable amount. Whereas I think something like the Fast and Furious movies have a better balance, where the things are kind of dumb, but there's a sort of like internal logic to them that's like, that's dumb, but it sort of works in this world, and the payoff's great because it's a cool, exciting thing. Did I know I wanted to see a car drive from one skyscraper through the window into the window of another skyscraper? No, I didn't know I wanted to see that in my life, but I did. And that's where I saw it. And it was worth the potential questions about the physics, because that's an awesome visual I've never seen in a movie. Do you know what I mean? It's a dumb idea. The Rock flexing his muscles and cracking his cast. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Did I fucking love that? Yes, I did. Because it wasn't so dumb that it wasn't worth the payoff, and that's that balance. The one that got me, Chris, and this is the nerdy one.
Can I just say, sorry, because to your point there, because also those moments, they don't do anything to break you out of those moments either. They're dumb fun, and you're like, wait, what you're not doing in those moments is going, hold on, did that dinosaur just kill that dog?
Yes.
Which takes you somewhat out of the fun.
Yeah. That's the other thing. This movie, its dumb stuff takes you out of the movie. Like the desperation they had, and I will come back to this, but the eagerness in which they were determined to fit in and bolt on this fourth act, and we're going to talk more about the fourth act in a minute. I think that's probably one of my bigger criticisms of the film as a more general thing, rather than just that the film contains lots of dumb stuff. The fourth act has to be sort of brought about by an act of madness, right? They must have been so angry that the first movie clarified that Island Nuba, whatever it is, the island from the first one, and this island are part of a small things off the coast of Costa Rica. Because I'm going to tell you now, Chris, at 20 knots of speed, that boat's still taking 6 days and 6 hours to get between the island and San Diego. Right. And I know this, Chris, because I charted it. There's a website where you can chart a ship path, and it will tell you can set the speed and you can chart the exact course of the ship. And I did two. I did one where it was like a bit of a wider berth, because I don't think you could have a boat go directly along the coastline. I don't think that's allowed. I think you've got to go out a bit into the ocean and then go along and then come in inland. And I did two. And the smallest amount of nautical miles between the two locations I could chart was 2,590. The rough amount, though, is about 3,000 nautical miles, which at 20 knots, which is the speed the movie gives that boat travels, by the way, because like that boat doesn't have a real world equivalent. It's a fictional boat. It's not like based on a real ship. So I couldn't even, because even 20 knots seems kind of fast for a ship that big, but I don't know. I don't know much about how these speeds are calculated.
Carrying a dinosaur.
So 20 knots seems fast to me, but let's just work with that. That's the speed the movie gives. Let's take the movie on its merit. At one point, Chris, right at the end of the movie, and there's a news report, they say they're halfway to the island and there's 200 nautical miles left, implying that the US is somehow 400 nautical miles away from Costa Rica. I don't know what wormhole they found, because like I said, the smallest number I could conjure plotting this was 2,500. So,
but also like how if they're too how are they doing that journey so quick, so slowly in the news report after, and so quickly the first time?
Yeah, well, because in the news report they sort of, I mean, by their logic, if it is just over 400 nautical miles, that's an 11-hour trip, right? And they do say we're halfway there. It's scheduled to arrive in the next few hours. So even the one on the news report seems more like time is passing, because if they're implying it's like an 11, 12-hour trip, we don't see a fraction of that on the way there, on the way to San Diego. So the movie has to like bend space and time in order to make the dinosaur get to San Diego. And here's my actual bigger criticism. That's just my nerdy, like I looked into this and it doesn't work. But here's the proper criticism. This movie wastes an entire potential third movie idea on its last 20 minutes. And that is a bigger crime than I can calculate in terms of filmmaking. I cannot understand the thinking behind this choice, other than that Spielberg knew he wasn't going to do the third one and he wanted to be the one to do it, which is pretty much what he said. And I think that is such a selfish choice. How awesome would it, Chris, have been if this movie had ended with just the bad guys winning? They called for support. Everyone was getting off. Malcolm and them are getting shuffled into a helicopter. They need to get off the island. Obviously, they're not going to turn down the help from InGen. They're not going to turn down the rescue. But as they're doing it, they realize the InGen guys kidnapped the T-Rex and the baby. And they got away with that. And it's our Empire Strikes Back ending, where it's like, we're leaving the island, so yay, this movie's plot is complete. But they're bringing a dinosaur to San Diego. And that's going to be a disaster. And then our next movie can be whichever collection of characters we are willing to come back for that sequel, showing up at the San Diego facility and going, this is going to go wrong. And we build up to the T-Rex getting out, and the whole movie is about the rampage.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have to awkwardly just lose two of your main characters. Obviously, the hunter, I can't remember his name. But the hunter, sorry, excuse me, small child, very tired. As in, I have a small child, that's why I'm very tired. The hunter, but at least,
he's not saying I am a small child, so I'm very tired. Yeah. Chris needs feeding through the night.
Chris sleepy. I mean, the hunter guy. At least they write him out. Nick just fucking. You know what? If you're gonna do that, fucking, at least have them get out. The three of them. They look at the situation. Maybe they all together see the boat crash, and you just have Vince Vaughn as Nick going, "Nah, fuck that," and just turn and walk away. I would much rather that than just like, "Oh, Nick's just gone, is he?" And like you say, your solution of we'll just make it an entire movie means you get around that. It would feel less like you just two characters didn't die but didn't make the whole movie. It's just mad.
Look, yeah, and then you get away with the whole. You don't have to do the contrivance as well, because the other contrivance that has to happen to make the T-Rex be loose in San Diego immediately is that they're all the stupidest people on the planet, and for some reason, even though the ship has crashed and no one's responding, and therefore it's clear that something very horribly wrong has gone on that ship, someone still hits the big green button to open the door. It's probably fine, right? That T-Rex is probably still asleep and in its... Yeah, we'll just hit the button.
A door, by the way, here's another, add this to our list of dumb logic, the movie just needs it to happen things. So, the T-Rex, presumably, Dan, has got out of the cargo hold. Yeah. Killed everyone including the crew. Including the crew in like the fucking captain's. I don't know what's that. The hold? What's that called? No, not the. What's that called on a boat? I don't know. The driver's seat, whatever.
Yeah,
the end. The control room. Let's call it. Killed everyone, and then just popped back in the cargo hold.
Yeah. So how did the T-Rex's head even fit into that room?
It's mad. And
I like the idea that it was like a weird like comic scene where like they hear the roaring and the screaming, and one of them goes, "I should go out and look what happened," and he goes out, and then you hear the T-Rex roar, and you hear his screams, and you hear the splat as the blood goes everywhere, and then the other guy, the captain, and looks around and he goes, "You should go check on Jenkins." And then he goes, "Yeah, I will, I think. Yeah, so it doesn't sound good, does it?" Then he goes out, scream, splat. And then the captain's like, going, "Oh, God, I'm going to have to check on Johnson because that didn't sound good." And they all just one by one went out to their deaths. Because I don't understand how they're dead if they didn't leave that room.
Or why there's not the wreckage, why the ship is not torn to pieces. Like, to show, the T-Rex rampaging out everywhere. It's just
do you still call it a cockpit on a boat? I'm wondering the same question now. What is it? Is it called a cockpit on a boat?
I don't know. Yeah, look it up. Well, I rant about the fact that, so all of that is dumb. Every element of it, like you say, the time it takes to do the journey, the fact that it's so bolted on. I don't really understand. If Spielberg has essentially said, "Oh, I wanted to make sure I did it," well then do more than what appears to me to just be a Godzilla parody with it. Like,
yes,
actually do something with it then. Rather than this strange 20-minute tacked-on Godzilla parody, which is what we've got at the moment.
Yeah, it's not good. And look, there's a danger that maybe the third movie having the T-Rex in San Diego would have just felt like a pale imitation of a Godzilla movie. And that's definitely a danger that you take if you set up the next movie as being that. But it's got to be more interesting. Or maybe you just say, hey, that's the start. Like, they won, they got a T-Rex. But the next movie starts, we're a couple of months on, And they've also now brought several species over. And it's about a sort of a Jumanji-style stampede through San Diego of, there's raptors and there's the T-Rex and the Stegosaurus, and, we can do lots of different interesting things with the different animals out escaping from a facility going wrong. But it's the one. Like, basically, the premise of this, the ending of this movie should be in Gen of 1, and they're starting to build their very dangerous theme park in San Diego. And it's going to be so much worse than when the park went wrong, because there's a big crowd. There's crowds and crowds of people that are going to be murdered. Right? That's your actual setup, right? That's the scary part of this movie ending, with them having captured and bringing back several of the dinosaurs. It doesn't really matter what you then do with it. You can then try and make it more interesting in the next movie. That's fine. But that's where this movie should have ended, by an absolute country mile. It's crazy to me that we speed run what could have been the third movie badly, instead of letting that third movie exist like that. Instead, let me guess, is there a third island? Let's find out, I guess.
That's my assumption. I also, and I'll use this to link in to talk about Ian. The other upsetting thing for me about the let's call it the fourth act. The fourth act is you had the option to extend what was a really interesting thing about potentially Ian's character in this movie, which is if you just fleshed out the scene at the beginning and made it a sort of theme for the entire movie. He fleshed out the scene where that guy on the subway, I think it was the subway, is like criticizing Ian and is like, oh, you're that mad guy with that story about the dinosaurs, like, and you see, like, make Ian frustrated that no one believes him. Make him, you'd have to address why everyone else also didn't talk up or whatever. But you find a way.
The movie does kind of do that, because basically it's like they all signed NDAs, basically, so they've all gone back to their lives and have just kept their mouth shut. Because who wants to be sued by someone as rich as InGen? Like, it sort of makes sense. Yeah. I get it. Like, yeah.
So fine. So Ian is seen as the crazy guy that said all this stuff. Have that define his character for the movie. Use that as a justification for his slight character changes, which I'll come to in a second, or my view on it in a second. And then, like, how cool would it be if we see that same guy that's giving him shit see the dinosaur? And that whole element of Ian was telling the truth, you could have... Do you know what I mean? You could have done something with that in the third act and made some attempt to link stuff back. The only element of the third act I liked was the firm button on Hammond's change. And, he's gone from being the person that isn't believing Ian and doesn't want to listen to him. It is Malcolm. Ian Malcolm. Is dismissive of that. And then he's using his words to the world. I really liked that. I did enjoy that element. Malcolm. Now, I'm assuming, I've not looked this up, because, we try and keep ourselves clear of other people's thoughts before going into a review. But my assumption is that his character change annoyed a lot of people. And I'm not just talking about him having a daughter, although it does feel a bit left field when it first happens. Or going from I can't wait to meet the next future ex Mrs. Malcolm, to being so in love with this girlfriend that he travels to the island to save her.
I think in the first movie that Grant does ask if he has kids, and he says yes.
Oh, does he? Okay, fine.
I'll double check.
So I'm not talking about those things. Those things I actually quite like. To be honest with you, I struggle with my feelings on the fact that his character is, well, probably just written worse, because they have an attempt at the quips, but it's just not as natural. And that's a good summary for me of this movie. They attempt to do everything the first movie did. It's just not subtle. It's just not good. And I think Ian's a part of that. But Ian certainly seems more subdued and a different character. But I wrestle with it, because I think that's probably the right decision. I think the Ian character, Ian Malcolm in the first movie, is a fantastic side character, but he can't be the heart. He's a bit too quippy to be the heart of the movie, the way that Alan is. And I just feel like that would apply here, and it would have, if they hadn't have changed his character a little bit, it would have come across like you're trying to make. It would have come across exactly as it would have been. You're trying to make a quippy, funny side character the main heart of the movie, and they're not built for that. They're not designed for that. So I understand it and don't necessarily disagree with it, but it's too jarring a change. It's not written well. It's not written as they attempt to write it as, I'm really trying to sort my life out. I've gone through a really hard thing. It made me think. I'm trying to be less jokey. I'm trying to be less of a dick, and I'm trying to do right by my daughter and my girlfriend. But they just don't push that narrative hard enough to make it work. So it just feels a bit jarring, especially if you watch the two films in pretty close succession. What's your that doesn't mean to say Jeff Goldblum isn't fantastic, by the way. He is. Like, he absolutely is. Like I say, I genuinely think every actor in this movie is brilliant. What's your views on Malcolm?
It's interesting on Malcolm, because I didn't really feel like it was a strictly speaking character change, because it felt like a pretty natural evolution of, there's this guy that he was an arrogant guy that had two things happen to him. His life was put in danger by a crazy experiment, but it made him right. And a person with ego being proven right in such a dramatic way, I think is potentially quite interesting. That's not sort of the direction they went in with it, because what they did immediately was give him like something beyond his beliefs to care about. And I think it's an interesting change, but change is a strong word. Basically, it's in the first movie. I've got the dialogue up just because I was looking to sort of like reference it here anyway. Grant asks him, "You got any kids?" And he goes, "Me? Oh, hell yeah, 3. I love them. I love kids. Anything at all can and does happen." And then he adds, "Same with wives for that matter." And he goes, "Oh, you're married?" And Malcolm goes, "Occasionally, always on the lookout for the next future ex Mrs. Malcolm." Which I think is a very funny line. And I just think it's because we've got the feed. We know that he's had a lot of relationships that have fallen apart, and that has resulted in some children that he's obviously very fond of. So it's like there's two ways I feel like you could go with this movie, which is that like ego guy going out to the island to prove that he was right because people don't believe him anymore. And he's found out there are more dinosaurs. Or you'd give him the family heart angle. And I just feel like, I think the issue isn't so much that it's a change, so much that it's not necessarily the most obvious progression for him as a character. It makes more, if you're going to make him the lead, giving him the heart storyline does work better, I think, than not. But it feels at odds with where we were at with him and the previous one. Not because it's not like a part of his character, but because that just wasn't the focus then. And I'm not against them sort of shifting it so we're looking at a different aspect of his sort of personality now. We're looking more at his like humanistic side, his family side, his caring for the ones he loves. No one he loved was on that island. These were strangers to him when he arrives, right, in the first movie. And I'm not saying that means he doesn't care about these people. It's just not the same though, is it? Now we're seeing him with his actual family in danger, and his behavior has changed. And I don't think that's... It's written very inelegantly, but I don't think that is inherently wrong. So I think actually,
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think the idea, because I also don't think you could do this movie as you've just explained. You couldn't do this movie with him just as he was in the first movie. I just think it's executed badly.
Yeah, but I guess that's what I'm waffling a little bit because I hadn't really thought about it until we started discussing it now. So I'm sort of formulating my thought as I speak. But I guess to summarize my thoughts on this is they did the exact right thing to adjust which aspect of Malcolm we were looking at to make him the lead of this. They executed it inelegantly so it doesn't feel like the same character but a different aspect of him. Sometimes it feels like a different character. But when you actually analyze what it is he's doing and say, you go, no, this all still fits with what I knew about him. It's just that we've not written it elegantly enough to still feel like him. That's the issue. And I mean, look, a lot of this script comes down to a lack of elegance in execution. I mean, that is like 90% of what the problem is with this. It feels like they came up with 5 to sort of 8 set pieces and then backwards engineered the sort of scenarios in which they would occur. And that's not too bad when they're on the island, because obviously stitching together one sequence where you're being chased by a dinosaur with a different kind of sequence where you're being chased by a dinosaur on an island full of dinosaurs, not that hard. But it really falls apart where you have to start contriving, why is there a T-Rex in San Diego? So yeah, the whole movie is like that, though. It's all very inelegant. It's all very, like, written... It feels written quickly, and it feels written without much thought being put into it. And I'm sure that's not the case, but, like, that's how it comes across, for sure. For sure.
Can I name another dumb thing?
Oh, please.
So you got the Hunter character,
Yes.
whose name I can't remember, acted particularly beautifully, with like, unfortunately, slightly thin dialogue.
Yeah,
but
I think
pathos
it's
and performance.
Pofflewhite plays the character.
My God, he's good.
He's great at this. And the character called Roland Tembo.
Yeah, so Roland, that bit at the end where he's like, well, I've already experienced the chaos of death, or whatever that line is. Like, oh, man, like, it's fantastic. But here's a dumb thing, right? If you want to make the point, and again, I like the idea. I think it's a really good idea that you've got this hunter who's there because he sees the dinosaur as the ultimate prey. But then, as a result of capturing the dinosaur, he loses his friend, and he basically he sees death, and he doesn't like it, and the cost was too great, kind of thing. I love that. But if you want us to connect to that and feel that emotionally resonates, don't make the friend dress exactly the same way as another character and actually cause a fair bit of confusion throughout the movie for a first-time watcher to kind of track and be like, oh yeah, no, oh yeah, and to have to keep reminding yourself that they're different fucking people because his friend, whose name I can't remember, is it AJ? I think is the friend.
Yeah,
like AJ and Ludlow. Like, I'm not being like, don't cast actors that look the same, but fucking hell, if you're going to do that, can one of them not be wearing glasses and a hat?
Yeah, can one of them not be wearing the identical headgear? Yeah, I agree. I found that very confusing, and it was only like 2/3 of the way to the movie I realised they were two separate characters. I found that very hard to track. Also, it was a strange
but again,
especially because so many of these scenes are in like the pitch black, like of the night. Like I suppose it'd be a little bit easier if it was like the first movie and there were quite a lot of scenes in daylight. But this movie doesn't have many scenes in daylight, and that is unfortunate.
Roland's brilliant though, and that actor does a fantastic job. And like I say, I like that idea. I really like the idea of the dinosaur being the ultimate prey, and then him essentially seeing death and going, no, fuck this, and just walking. And that shot where he's walking away to the helicopter, brilliant. And like you say, get rid of Act 4, make the island shit the entire movie, flesh out some of this stuff. Maybe don't have the gymnastics kicking the dinosaur in the face, and you got good stuff because there's some really great stuff in it. Like, for example, and I feel like I've spoken a lot, so I'm gonna pass to you if you don't mind to talk about how brilliant this sequence is. But like the truck and the cliff sequence. So yeah, let's chat about that because it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean that's my favorite sequence in the whole movie, and I remember saying to you last week, like, I know for sure we've got at least one amazing sequence that rivals the T-Rex from the first movie somewhere in this movie, and I was thinking of this, and it holds up. It's so tense. It's Spielberg firing on all cylinders, being Spielberg. I mean, look, the sequence is written well too. Like the actual scenarios they get themselves into feel believable for the situation, but have that tension of like, I don't know how they get out of this. It's so for those who don't remember, there's two RVs that are sort of strapped together, and one gets pushed over the cliff, so it's completely vertical. Yeah, and it's like, it's just like a tube to death. Like if you fall down it, and then the other one is the usual way up, holding it on, and like Julianne Moore's character Sarah Harding falls through, and like the door comes off the bottom, and she's basically being held there by a pane of glass, and every time she moves, it cracks, and the tension of that as they're trying to get to her, like it's a proper it is a cliffhanger both literally and figuratively in terms of like the tension of this sequence as they dangle off a cliff edge is incredible, and it has the brilliant hero moment for Richard Schiff's character Eddie, because he gets to he shows up with the rope. They do that amazing long shot where the camera goes from outside the trailer to give you a sense of space and where everything and everyone is. There's this amazing crane shot that comes down into the RV from the outside and follows him in as he has the rope, and then looks down at the people waiting for the rope, all in one continuous shot. It's like, so good. And then they're holding onto the rope, but the trailer's giving way, and then it falls down, but around them because they're holding onto the rope. And it, like, everything about that sequence, top to bottom, is just masterful. From the initial T-Rex attack that pushes it over the edge, right through to the moment they climb up and they get themselves back up and they look up and it's the InGen guys. Just genius. Everything about that sequence, top to bottom, is amazing. It really is. Spoiler alert, I'm probably not going to recommend people bother with this movie, but I will say if you are interested, just skip to whatever, whenever this sequence starts and just watch this sequence, because it is brilliant. It's genuinely very good. Yeah, really, really like it. For the minute the T-Rexes show up, that scene is just absolutely tense as hell. It's the best thing in the movie for sure. So yeah, but again, a lot of the sequences in this movie work in isolation. They're being chased down the river and the T-Rex head coming in under the waterfall, and then you get that river of blood thing where it eats one of them. And it's the scientist guy.
The river of blood is brilliant.
Yeah, because it eats the guy, and then the waterfall just turns red. Like, oh no! Like,
and the build of that sequence, like with the guy with the headphones, so he doesn't hear that he's gone, and then the fact that he's been shitty to these little dinosaurs the whole movie, and then they all start to rush.
Oh, that one as well. Yeah, the compy attack. Yeah, Christ, that's terrifying. It's like something from Gremlins. Like they're swarming him. Like, yeah, that's brilliant. Also, I like the sequence where the T-Rex finds them while they're sleeping. Like, that's really cool. There's a couple where it's like a good idea rushed through, sadly. Like, I think the raptors in the long grass, sadly, is wasted. I think it's such a good idea to say there's like head-high grass and there's raptors hiding in it. Like, you tell me that, I'm like, oh my god, the movie has that in it? And I remember actually that shot of the raptor leaping out of the tall grass was in the trailer. And I remember as a kid seeing that and being like, I need this movie, inject it into my veins. Like, I didn't say that, but like, I needed the movie so desperately, and that was the shot. That shot and the shot of the T-Rex like headbutting the bus were both in the trailer, if I remember rightly, and I was like, I don't know what this movie is. It looks insane. I want to see it. I want to see every minute of this. And sadly, I do think the raptors in the field one is a bit rushed and doesn't really go anywhere. Like, they just a few of them die and then they move on. Whereas I feel like that could have been a really tense sequence. Maybe place that earlier in the movie. They have to cross the field and they don't know what's in the grass, and you do that as a moment of tension, and then lead up to people just starting to vanish. Because raptors are clever hunters. Where's that gone, by the way? Where's the raptors being clever hunters in this movie? They're just sort of chasing them in this movie. They're not like opening doors or like... Although they do that great thing where Jeff Goldblum's character locks the car door because he knows that the raptor is capable of probably opening it, which I think is funny and does work.
So my interpretation of that was that because they, the dinosaurs in the first movie have evolved in part because they've been living with humans. So these dinosaurs haven't been. So therefore, I actually quite like that they didn't open doors or anything like that. Because,
sure. But they still told us in the last movie, though, that the raptors are these natural genius hunters, and they trick you. That you're looking at one, but actually the attack is coming from the side. That sort of thing.
That's me responding specifically
to that specific criticism. Yeah, no, of course, yeah. But in a world where like they told me how smart these things are, the door thing was just another example of how smart they were. Just in general, the raptors were just mindless monsters here. And I feel like don't include them if that's what you're going to do. Make it a different dinosaur. Because also, I mean, look, and the movie doesn't... I also sort of understand there's a choice you want to make where you go like, I'm going to surprise the audience by just raptors are here. And everyone's being eaten by raptors. Oh my god, the raptors are back. They didn't build up to it. They didn't, like... There's no, like, moment where you realise... There's no moment where someone's like... it's raptors. And you realize how much trouble they're in. You know what I mean? We just don't treat them with any reverence whatsoever. And I just feel like they were such a threat in the first movie. The fact that they're now interacting with them in this movie is just like happening. And I know that they were probably going for like shock and awe impact, like, oh my god, it's terrifying, the raptors are here and they're just suddenly attacking them and they're running everywhere. I get what they were going for with that, but it just doesn't work. Like, have the tension moment, have people disappearing in the grass, and then have one of them figure out by hearing that sort of like that noise the raptors make, but like that really subtle one, that that sort of noise, have someone hear that and be like, run. Like, it's raptors, fucking run. Like, that would have made it so much more impactful. But they don't do anything with it. So even if they'd done that, it wouldn't have fixed the problem, because the problem is just that they're present. It's the only real sequence in the whole movie, that raptor sequence at the end, from the tall grass through to the gymnastics kicking one through the window, and then that fucking... you know what, actually, Chris, I'm sorry, I've got a moment that's worse than the raptor being kicked through the window. We'll talk about it in a second. Go on, make your point before I bring it up.
Oh, just a whole, like, back and forth, like, running in and out of buildings, and you don't know which building's which. Malcolm's holding a door up against a dinosaur, like, it's just, and then that dinosaur, the steel door doesn't compare to his daughter's kick. Like, that whole sequence is just, it's
bad.
Farcical. It's like, it plays like a farce. Honestly, if you make the dinosaurs people, that scene is the end of a farce play. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep. And I think the bit that got me, that really like bothered me, even worse than kicking the dinosaur through the glass with the power of gymnastics, was...
You're really going to have to convince me on whatever this is.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Julianne Moore's character has been separated from the others, right? And she's trying to get back to them. And she's being attacked by the raptors. And eventually, Chris, she falls through a hole, which leads into a basement room of a building. She lands on the light. The light breaks, but just in this perfect way where the two front bits break, so it falls down, creates a ramp, which she then rolls off through a small hole. And Jeff Goldblum and his daughter are just there waiting for her, grab her by the hand, and they all run off. It is the most absurd sequence of accidents leading her to where she needs to be I have ever seen in a movie. It's insane, Chris. Like, it's like she has to fall through the hole, complete accident. The light has to break in that perfect way. She has to then have the wherewithal to roll forward. She then goes through a random gap in a wall and just comes across Jeff Goldblum's character and the daughter, who are not just passing and go, oh, there's Sarah. They're like waiting for her with their hands out. Like, they knew she was going to burst through this random hole or this random wall. It's fucking insane.
Look, it's coincidental, but it doesn't break physics as much as.
No, I think the contrivance of that is way less believable than somebody swinging their entire body weight to kick a raptor and knocking it off balance. It is kind of absurd, but it's nowhere near as absurd as the level of coincidence that all those things need to line up to bring her exactly to where she needs to be. Not by her own choice, but by just dumb luck and like a fucking Rube Goldberg machine of bullshit happening. Fuck me, that whole sequence is awful. The movie just falls apart basically the second the raptors show up, because then after that it's bolted on fourth act, and we've already complained about why that's terrible. So yeah, it starts okay and it gets worse and then it gets even worse. We hand wave away the lysine deficiency, and I also want to just point out that the lysine deficiency, they clearly regretted writing that into the last movie because they didn't really have much of an explanation. The closest they get to explaining it, and it's the best attempt the movie has. So at first, we just hand wave it with "Life will find a way," which I just hated. Absolutely
I didn't mind that. I honestly, in a world where dinosaurs can evolve to open doors in the first movie, I absolutely think, well, they evolved. Life found a way, it's fine. Like,
yeah, I guess so. I needed more, because the first movie had such a point of they can't survive without us giving them this very specific chemical. I'm like, they can open doors. I don't imagine they're in labs, in lab coats, with beakers and Bunsen burners trying to figure out how to create lysine. So I was a bit like,
Yeah, but the movie's also like with the men can't form, that we can't have a male species, and that
they find a way around
that happens.
No, I agree.
Frog DNA.
Yeah, it's nowhere near the movie's worst crimes. Don't get me wrong, but they do sort of do a little bit better later on. They have a more thorough explanation. When they first arrive, Sarah says to them that what she's seen is that they're eating a lysine-heavy diet. It's like they knew they needed that, or no, it's not that they knew they needed that. It's like it's how evolution works. It's happened on a ridiculously macro scale, which shouldn't happen. But what she's essentially implying is the dinosaurs that lent towards a lysine-heavy diet survived, and the ones that didn't died off. So now the offspring we're having are naturally leaning towards a lysine-heavy diet and replenishing their lysine naturally, and they've evolved to eat those things, which sort of makes sense, but not really in the time scale, because evolution of that nature takes generations and generations. But the movie needs it to happen, like evolution to have occurred of a sort, like, I don't know, over a few months. So yeah, okay.
I think you just did. Look, Dan, you specifically just need to accept that time works differently in the Jurassic Park universe.
That's fair.
Can we talk about? I'm going to use the word stupid instead. Can we talk about how fucking stupid the title is? Is there anything in the triv about why it's The Lost World Jurassic Park as opposed to Jurassic Park The Lost World?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. We'll cover. Do you want me to jump down and cover that now while we're here?
Yeah, let's cover it now. Yeah, why not?
Okay. So the title of the novel was just The Lost World, which is a reference to a Arthur Conan Doyle book. The studio were worried that people would either think it's an adaptation of that or just not know it was a Jurassic Park book. So then they were considered renaming it The Lost Island to change the connotation to the Arthur Conan Doyle book. But then they're like, well, that's still not going to solve the problem of telling people it's a sequel to Jurassic Park. There was discussion of whether the logo would just be enough. The skeletal T-Rex logo, the iconic logo. If it says The Lost World and it's in that logo, you'll just know that it's Jurassic Park, which is what happened to the book. The book's called The Lost World, but it's in that classic Jurassic Park skeletal logo thing. But in the end, the compromise was made that to ensure that people would understand it was a sequel to Jurassic Park, the final title was settled on as The Lost World Jurassic Park.
Dumb.
It's super
I
dumb.
don't really know. That it sort of doesn't answer why they dismissed Jurassic Park 2 or Jurassic Park The Lost World.
Well, it doesn't, because I guess they were trying to just keep it to the title of the book to sort of suggest we've honoured the book here, which, by the way, they didn't really. It's much looser an adaptation of the book than the first one was, if I'm being honest. And so much so that I don't have a list of changes because it's just pointless. That's folly. They're very different stories, not really worth doing comparisons. So yeah, a bit unfortunate, but yeah, I can sort of see how they got there. I agree with you. It doesn't. Like the more sensible answer of Jurassic Park: The Lost World, or just calling it Jurassic Park 2 would have probably been better. But hey ho,
yeah,
hey ho. Very quickly, a couple of other small notes I had. I loved seeing a Stegosaurus as a kid. Really liked that. It was crazy to me that was like a very iconic dinosaur wasn't in the first movie. We used it here, and we used it here for like the wow, it's so nice. Like we're gonna look at the majesty of dinosaurs scene. Perfect, great way to do it. We introduced them. They're not particularly dangerous dinosaurs, other than just that they're big and spiky. But it was one of my favorites as a kid. I was sad they weren't in the first movie. I was thrilled they were in it here. And it led to one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, which is when everyone is being all, oh, wow, Stegosaurus. And Jeff Goldblum's character is like, yeah, that's how it starts. Ooh, and oh, and then it's the screaming and the blood and the running. And I was like, that's really funny, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And that line is like very classic Ian Malcolm as well. Like that line feels more like that character than almost anything else he says in this movie.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say that was fair.
Yeah, because I would say actually that's the bigger issue with Malcolm is just the dialogue just doesn't always feel like him. Like I don't mind that they've changed like what his priorities are. I guess I'm more offended by the fact he doesn't speak like Ian Malcolm very often.
It's that classic sequel thing of it feels like someone it feels like the dialogue is someone going, "Oh, we need to have Ian Malcolm style dialogue." And again, it feels like very poor sequel in, "Oh, do say this for the trailer," like, and Mummy's hungry, like, it just doesn't feel. It feels like an impression. Not Goldblum's performance, but the writing.
Yeah, although it does have another one of my favorites from early in the movie. It's when they're just looking for Sarah, and Vince Vaughn's character yells, "Sarah Harding!" And he goes, "How many Sarahs do you think are on this island?" Which they pay off later in a really subtle way. I don't know if you noticed this, Chris, but later on, when they're looking for Nick, Jeff Goldblum's Ian Malcolm yells, "Nick Van Owen!" Which I'd never noticed before until this viewing, and I thought that was amazing. I tell you another subtle detail I really liked, actually. Her lucky pack that she refers to at the beginning of the movie saves her life twice in this film. And I did not know that as a kid. I did not notice that as a kid. For those who don't remember, it saves her when she's about to fall through the glass. She grabs onto the pack. And then later in the movie, the raptor knocks her down and goes to bite her. But what it grabs initially is not the flesh off her back, but actually her backpack, which it tears off first. Which, while it's figuring out that that's not flesh and then goes back for more, she's sort of crawling away. So it's not my favorite moment in the movie, but I do like that the lucky backpack does actually turn up in the script as a thing.
Yeah, and I like her, and I know I've said it a few times, but just to reiterate, Vince Vaughn, Julianne Moore, even the young actress that plays Kelly, I genuinely think everyone's doing a really good job, performance-wise in this movie, especially with the script they've been given. It's great to see Richard Attenborough as Hammond, even though it's only 2 brief scenes. But he was great. It's the cast are brilliant and absolutely doing their best with what they've been given. I think, Dan, it's fair to say, not recommending.
Yeah, not recommending. Just bad. Yeah, just it's a bad movie. It's a bad movie. With a few highlights and moments that are good. But I think if I was summarizing, I would basically say that it's 4 or 5 really good scenes stitched together with a dreadful script.
Yes, and I think you could say the same thing, but replace the word scenes with ideas as well. I think the scenes are better than the ideas, probably. Like we've talked about the sequence with the truck and stuff, and the attack. I don't think it's raptors, sorry, but the dinosaurs, the T-Rex coming to the camp and all of that.
When its head is in the tent and it's breathing on them, man. Oh, love that. Yeah. I do have another couple of quick notes, if that's okay, before we get into Triv. Is that all right? The opening scene is harrowing. We mentioned last week that there were 2 scenes cut from the original film that were in the book. One was a child being attacked by small dinosaurs, the compies. That's what happens here. And the other one is the sequence where they're running down the river and they end up inside the waterfall. And the T-Rex head's nose is sort of coming through the water into the little cavern where they're hiding. That's from the book for the first movie, and both sequences were then placed into this one. It's funny because, in the first movie, it was deemed too expensive to do the T-Rex chasing them down the river. It was supposed to be Grant and the 2 kids inside the waterfall. So they snuck it in here. I guess, I don't know, they found a way to do it cheaper, I guess. And then the little girl with the compies was just deemed to be too horrific to have a child murdered by these dinosaurs. This movie decided to combat that by just having a really random stray line later where someone's like, she was fine, by the way, that girl. They look at the camera and they're like, that small child, injured but alive. And then they wink at the camera and then they move back to what they're doing.
I think in general this film is actually is riskier and darker when it comes to the deaths and the gore in it. I think it's a gorier movie than the first. We've not really talked about it. Poor Eddie, just trying to do the right
Justice
thing
for Eddie.
the entire movie, and old Ziegler gets pulled apart by two dinosaurs. It's horrific. That's a really brutal death. And the tiny dinosaurs later pecking the man until his blood goes into water. There's some really grim gore in this movie. I just don't think it balances. I think the shame of it is, and it's actually another point I thought of that I've not said yet. The first movie is a masterstroke in the number of tones it balances and the number of genres the film covers over its runtime.
Yeah.
This film is trying to do an impression of all of them and failing on all of them. The closest it probably gets is being a different type of horror movie, being a gore horror movie. This, the first film has a lot of tension, thriller-based horror. This second one is, in some respects, closer to Final Destination in moments than it is anything else. Yeah. And that's a choice. Like I say, in some ways, I think I'm complimenting that element of the movie. I'm saying of all the genres, that's one it sort of achieves. Some of the gory deaths, I
agree. I think tonally it's trying to do what the first movie did, but doesn't successfully balance them like the first movie did. And look, there's nothing wrong with attempting to do that. I think even to say like, oh, it's copying the first one. That's what the first one did. It's fine. It's allowed to do things the first movie did. It's more about the execution than doing that in the first place. Like, I'm okay with this movie attempting to replicate what made that first movie so special. It's the sequel to that movie. There's an element of me that wants more of what that first movie was. I liked the first movie. It's why I've turned up for the second. But if you're going to do that, you need... It's a tricky balance, sequels. We've talked about this a lot, but it's that balance of, like, I want innovation, but I also need the same. And finding where that line is of, like, you've got to innovate enough for it to feel like a fresh movie, but you've got to have enough of this old stuff and tone to sort of make sure I feel like it's a sequel. This movie really just does try to do the first one again and then has its innovation in its last act or its fourth act. The problem with the way it's structured is there's too much crammed into its runtime. Nothing gets done properly, and as a result, it doesn't even manage to replicate the things the first one did well, because it's just constantly rushing and contriving reasons for things to be happening and just like stitching everything together really poorly, and it's just a bit of a mess as a result. So I agree with your observation and your criticism there, Chris. I'm sort of looking at it like I don't even mind that they're trying to do what the first movie did. I take offense to the poor execution.
Yeah,
that's
completely
really
agree.
The issue.
Completely agree.
So the other thing, a couple of other quick notes. First of all, I love that the kids from the first movie are in this one, even if it's brief. Just nice little, why not bring them back for a scene? And they've grown so obscenely much in such a short space of time. It's crazy. But that's how children
time works differently in the Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it's actually been 15 years.
Also, fair play to them for still hanging out with their granddad. Fucking hell.
He seems delightful. He's nice now.
Yeah, but who are let's talk about those kids' parents. Like, we're just going around Granddad. We're just going to be pottering around his mansions. Last time you ended up getting chased by dinosaurs. Like, we'll come with.
No, it's we're going to pot around to Granddad's things. You guys trying to get more of a portion of the will? Is this a strategy for when Granddad passes on? You guys trying to usurp your parents in terms of getting some of this moolah? That's what it feels like.
Yeah, but those kids have every right to be like, yeah, we are. We got fucking chased by dinosaurs.
Yeah, Granddad got us chased by dinosaurs.
And then they're like, and then they go quiet. And they go, Alan would understand. And they're like, stop. Then the parents are like, stop fucking talking about Alan.
Alan gets
fed
us.
up. It's always Alan this and Alan that.
Alan gets us, Mum. Right. So I love that they're back in it. We already briefly touched on this, but the redemption arc for Hammond as a conservationist, right, from was it capitalist to conservationist or whatever, brilliant. Love that. Love that line. Love every scene that Hammond is in this movie is gold. Really well written, surprisingly well executed. Love it. I said last week, this movie has one of the greatest transitions between two scenes in cinema history. I stand by it, having rewatched it. It's the little girl screaming and then cutting to Malcolm yawning as the screech of a train is coming through in the opening of the movie. It's fucking incredible. It's such a good transition. I don't know how it works. I don't understand. I'm not really into like the editing side of things. But like, in terms of like knowing how we time things and we do these sort of cuts and what the pacing of that is to make it work. So I can't explain to you why that works, but but it fucking works. It's glorious. So good. I didn't like the artificial conflict between the father and the daughter because the father couldn't just tell her what was going on, like because the movie needs her to get on the thing, and if she knew what was actually happening, she wouldn't get on the thing. I hate this shit. I hate this shit in every movie that does it. Where are you going? I can't tell you. Oh, why? Because if you told me, I wouldn't sneak on board and then we wouldn't have a movie. Yeah, that's why. So they artificially argue, and he could end the argument in a second by just telling her what was happening. I'm going to save Sarah, who she seems to know and like. Whereas if he said that, she would just, thumbs up. Anyway, I wrote down a line, one of my favorite lines in the movie. It's, I've worked with predators since I was 20, says Sarah. Lions, jackals, hyenas, you, to Malcolm. Brilliant. Love that line so much.
Great line.
Love that line so much. I also liked I love you, I just don't need you right now. Actually, we haven't talked about this. Their relationship is actually like sort of well written for the first few scenes before the movie forgets that it exists. Like this idea of a couple that are like okay with being apart sometimes because they have their own lives is really compelling. And this idea that he's white knighting and rushed off to save her and she's like, I didn't need saving, is a really interesting idea. Now, the movie doesn't do anything with that, but when it is part of the premise of the movie, it's reasonably well written. So, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I think their relationship works, and actually I think it, when you watch the first movie and this movie so close together, that absolutely tracks and makes sense as a relationship that would work for that character.
Yes.
And you believe that dynamic would be the thing that would pin him down to having a girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. It sort of works. It makes sense. You sort of see those two together. They're a logical couple. I'm on board with a lot of the choices made in the early parts of this movie regarding those two characters. So yeah, thumbs up. We already talked about that. Let me calm that off. I do love the premise, by the way, of the InGen people being like, "Hey, that was crazy expensive to put, to build a facility on an island because, like, it's just very impractical. Maybe we could just bring the dinosaurs and have a little facility in San Diego, like SeaWorld." I actually think that's like a really logical a logical thing to choose to do if you're a person who doesn't understand the danger of what you have. Do you know what I mean? Like if we're accepting that these guys don't understand the risk of the dinosaurs and are just seeing money signs, that is exactly what you would do with them, right? That is exactly what you would do.
Yeah, absolutely. We also need to accept, of course, that they still don't see the dangers of it, even though they've all been attacked by a shitload of dinosaurs. At the end, obviously, but they choose to take them anyway.
Yeah, I guess, it's the folly of man, isn't it? Like, they're still seeing the dollar signs, but also you do that thing where you, like, the movie doesn't do this, and I'm giving the movie more credit than it deserves, because none of this is in the script. But there's an element, I always thought of it as, like, well, that was the island where they're all loose and, they're just out there. That is the risk you take when you visit the island. Our facility will have them, in cages and contained because, man is God in this situation. We control this. It's the same folly that led to Hammond to doing what he did, put them all in cages and expected them not to get out. So yeah, I think the funnier thing is that they've ignored the events of the first movie where all the dinosaurs were in cages and it still went very wrong. But that's kind of how I saw it. But you're right, the movie doesn't do that. I'm applying that logic to these characters. I will say the compy attack scene is really great, but I don't think the movie did enough to make me think he was so despicable. It was like another half-baked idea where it's like, all right, he zapped the compy. He's obviously not a nice man. Does he deserve to be torn to little bits by 1,000 of them? I think we probably could have done a bit more to show his cruelty and lack of care for the animals before we then gave him the satisfying death. Like in the first one, the sort of satisfying death of a villain, there's two of them. There's the lawyer who abandons two children to be eaten by a T-Rex and then gets what he deserves, and that is satisfying. Then we have, Needry, who's caused the entire problem. Again, character gets what he deserves. He zapped one with a electric thing, and it was fine. Didn't like it, I imagine. But it wasn't like he didn't like murder it. for funsies. It's not like he grabbed it by the throat and like throttled it or something. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like the movie wanted us to have an equivalent to those two from the first movie, but didn't quite know how to make me hate this character enough to justify him getting the really gruesome, oh, he deserved it death. So yeah,
I think with this kind of movie, because you haven't got much time, and to some degree, some characters are going to be fodder for deaths. You've either got to go to one extreme or the other. Yeah. You've either got to make you just go, this guy's an absolute prick and deserves what he gets. Like arguably the way that Newman is taunting the dinosaur in the first movie, and then gets the acid in the eye. Or you've got to make him so unbelievably lovely that your heart breaks, like Eddie in this film. Like they do Eddie well, but they just don't do the opposite well here, which is what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. Eddie's brilliantly done. Both the performance from Richard Schiff, but I think also in writing. I mean, he's dying trying to save them. Like he's fully the hero of the movie. Love it. Very last little note before we move on to the
and also, actually, sorry, just I love as well and again, I can't stress enough how good the guy playing Roland is. But I love that bit as well, where Malcolm's like, "Can we not just have a minute to mourn our friend?" And he's like, "Well, that means his troubles are over." Oh, that's a great line.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant line. Like that really says a lot about who that character is, and it's delivered brilliantly.
And now I think about it, Eddie's death is probably one of the goriest in the movie, right? Doesn't he get split in half because the two T-Rexes fight?
That's what I said earlier. Yeah. That's what led to my. Actually, I think as a gory film, it does the genre well.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You did say that. Sorry, it's one of those things where sometimes when we have these long, like hour and a half, 2 hour discussions of a film, I'm always like, "Did we cover that? I can't always remember."
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, that wasn't me moaning.
Very last little note before we do the triv. The problem starts here. For those who aren't familiar with these movies having too much reverence for the first one. There's a scene where Vince Vaughn's character goes into a thing and there's like a picture of the original Jurassic Park, because clearly this is like the premise is this is a place where they would set up the creatures that would become the attractions at the main park and would be sent over. There's a big mural to what the park the finished park will look like, and we do the music from the original, and Vince Vaughn looks at it wistfully. You weren't there. You have no connection to any of this. An hour ago, you thought the dinosaurs weren't even real. What the fuck are we doing? That is there for me, the audience. You want me to feel wistful. Vince Vaughn's character has no connection to any of that. Fuck off. Stop it. Bad movie.
It's also particularly weird when like Goldblum's character goes to the same place not that long after that and could just do that.
Yeah, you could. It would make, but then again, would that make even less sense because he hated his time at the original? I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I don't know, man. These movies are already we're one sequel in, and these movies already have too much reverence for the first one. Like, come on, stop it. If this movie was a person reaching across the table, I'd be slapping its hand away. That's for that. No. Bad movie.
Although,
Stop
credit to them, they don't repeat the score. It's got its own music.
Does. And it's got tones and themes from the original, but you're absolutely right. Williams, I assume Williams, actually. It's got to be Williams, right? I just assumed that. I never looked that up.
Has to be.
Let me find out, because I never actually checked. You would think.
Has to be John Williams.
No, this looks like maybe it's someone else. 1 second. Music written by Thomas Mendes? Is this not Williams? All cast and crew. Here we go. 1 second. Let me go on IMDb and just do it that way. Writers. There's the cast. Big cast. There's the cast again, but listed alphabetically. Oh no, composer John Williams. Okay, fine. Yeah, perfect.
Ah, cool.
Right, there you go.
Right, cool.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It doesn't repeat any of the. It has like tones and various like references to the music from the original inside of it, but it is very much its own pretty distinct score, which is why that moment actually stands out. I think if you'd have abused the score a bit for cheap nostalgia throughout the movie, that scene would have been even worse. But actually, that's pretty much the only moment we do the original music from the first one. Is when Vince Vaughn is wistfully looking at a picture of a place he didn't know existed 20 minutes ago. Anyway, let's do some trivia, Chris. Let's do the thing.
Let's triv it up!
I'll give you some trivia. Now, I'm going to start with a quote from Steven Spielberg. This is from the New York Times. He was promoting the BFG in 2016. My sequels aren't as good as my originals because I go into every sequel I've made too confident. This movie made $1 gazillion, which justifies the sequel. So I come in like, it's going to be a slam dunk, and I wind up making an inferior movie to the one before it. I'm talking about The Lost World.
Fair enough, I guess.
He's sort of implying like his attention to detail and his desire for creativity sort of went away because he was like, this will make money. Fair enough. All right, so let's talk about how this movie happened. And there's nowhere near as much trivia this week as last. You'll be glad to hear, Chris. So yeah, this will be a much quicker time. But basically,
all good.
No one will be surprised to hear that the studio was jumping up and down to do a sequel to the first movie. It was a budget of $63 million, made just short of $1 billion. Even with that $68 million marketing budget, it made a lot of money for a lot of people. So, a sequel is inevitable. But it wasn't just the movie that was having a sequel demanded. Crichton was receiving a huge amount of pressure from publishers and fans to do a sequel to his novel. But Spielberg was taking a couple of years off. So everyone was like, Spielberg's out of the picture. He's taking a break from making movies. He might produce some stuff, but he's not going to direct for a couple of years. And Crichton was resistant because, as we talked about last week, crotchety old man was sick of all these fucking dinosaurs.
Hated him.
By the time he finished the first one, he was very much against it. But he did feel a bit obligated to make this, it seems, from the quotes I've read and some of the stuff. And I feel the same way with Spielberg almost. But so in March 1994, Crichton, I'm assuming reluctantly, starts writing the sequel. Again, in terms of movie rights, Spielberg was only ever going to be attached to any sequel as a producer. So the studio was holding out for Crichton's second novel. They didn't just want to barge into a sequel until they got a novel. They were like, let's at least... And you know what? Credit where credit's due. Because movies these days, they'd be like, give us an outline of what you're going to put in your sequel. We're getting our movie underway. We're capitalizing on the success. To the studio's credit, they actually ended up waiting a year or so to make this movie, to give him a chance to write the novel. And I just feel like in modern day, that would not happen at all. The studio
absolutely would not happen.
Yeah. But that sort of ended up leading to Spielberg being able to do this, because they waited so long. When Crichton hands in his book to his publishers, the manuscript, in March 95, the studio were in talks with Joe Johnston to potentially direct. I guess Joe Johnston would be mostly known as Captain America, the first Captain America movie, the first Avenger director these days. But I mean, he's a prolific director. If anyone wants to just have a little Google of Joe Johnston, like if you see the Rocketeer, I think was his. 1 second, Johnston. Let me just see, because was Inner Space his as well? I think Inner Space was his. I love that movie. That movie's going to come up on here at some point. What else is he? Oh, Jumanji. Yeah, that Jumanji's another one he'd be known for. Yeah, Rocketeer, Captain America, Jumanji. There you go. Those are the movies I was talking about. Oh, he did The Page Master. I love that movie. Anyway, they were talking to Joe Johnston about this. But basically...
Also, sorry, just to interrupt you, Dan. He did also do Jurassic Park 3.
That's coming. I was going to get to that. Yeah. In the end, he ended up coming back and doing Jurassic Park 3. So he's in discussions to do this movie, and it's like hit and miss about scheduling, because basically the time frame the studio want to shoot is sort of a little bit clashing with his shoot for Jumanji. Jumanji ends up overrunning, which rules him out for this movie. At this point, the novel comes out September 95, and then Spielberg is officially announced to direct the sequel 2 months later in November. As I mentioned, the irony of this being, as has been mentioned, the irony of this being that Johnston would eventually go on to do the third film. So clearly the studio was still happy to let him make a Jurassic Park movie. Just hadn't worked out for scheduling reasons the first time. Spielberg and Crichton both agreed to forego upfront fees for this movie. So they didn't get paid directly. They were going to get some of the back end. This meant that the studio felt a bit more confident to offer Coep, the writer of the first movie, a pretty lucrative deal to adapt the second one. A fee that is rumoured to be between $1.5 and $2 million.
Wait, sorry, hold on. Are you saying that this movie has the same writer as the first one?
Yes, I am, Chris.
What the fuck? Seriously?
Yep. And I'm gonna...
That is genuinely shocking to me.
Yeah. I agree. I really agree. Is it just that they had more time for the first one? I don't know, Chris. That surprised me also. So Spielberg and Crichton agreed to not take any money. They were just getting back end. Coep had an interesting thing where he said that when he was writing the script of this movie, he taped a fan letter next to his computer screen. The letter was from a young fan of Jurassic Park who had complained he waited too long to put dinosaurs in that movie.
That fan is missing the point, and he shouldn't be listening to that fan.
Correct, on all fronts. In a book called The Making of Lost World Jurassic Park by Jodie Duncan, the Coep noted that the first Jurassic Park film was philosophical about bringing dinosaurs back to life and how they would impact humanity. He said, "We had thoroughly explored those questions in the first movie, so I didn't want to return to them. The Lost World is less philosophical and more about basic survival." Basically, none of that chat about the ethics of whether we're bringing dinosaurs back. Let's have them chase them around a park. So yeah,
that is maddening to me. That of all the things I would not have predicted that you were going to tell me the writers were the same. That's blown my mind.
Yeah. So according to the films of Steven Spielberg by Douglas Broad, it's another book. During an early meeting with Coep, Spielberg noted that the original film provided a contrast between herbivores and carnivores when it came to the dinosaurs. Spielberg had determined that the new sequel should additionally focus on humans who are gatherers, observers of the dinosaurs, and hunters who want to capture and kill dinosaurs for a zoo. That is sort of present in this movie, but not really. Not really. I like that idea. The movie doesn't really explore it, though, does it?
No, not at all.
So the book is massive and would have been very challenging to cut down to a film. The second book, I should say. And basically, Spielberg and Coep had their own ideas they wanted to explore. So from what I can tell, the novel is so far away from this, I'm not going to go into a lot of the differences, but it might sort of explain why this script isn't quite as good. The first one was, I think, reasonably faithful to the book, so maybe a lot of what made that first film good was the Crichton elements, not stolen, it's an adaptation, but adapted from the novel. Whereas, and I've got a quote here from Kathleen Kennedy, she told Time magazine, "In the same way Michael doesn't see writing as a collaboration, Stephen went off and made his own movie. When Michael turned the book over to Stephen, he knew his work was finished." So what she's essentially saying there is, Michael finished the book and went, "I don't give a shit what you do with it. Your call, I guess, it's Mr. Spielberg." And then he washed his hands of the whole thing. Whereas in the last one,
which tracks with the Michael Crichton we know and love.
Yeah, it does. I absolutely love this man. He's the best. But yeah, so I think maybe if we are going to try and ponder the reasons that the movie ended up so different, I do think one of the more likely explanations is that the first one's quality, a lot of the stuff that we liked about it may have been just stuff that came over from the book, and if they adapted less of the book this time, maybe that's part of the problem. Yeah, combine that with maybe less time and less drafts, although, and also this, actually, I forgot about this. Actually, here's another explanation, Chris, for why this movie doesn't work as well despite having the same writer. Just 2 months before production began, Spielberg changed the ending to include the T-Rex rampaging through San Diego.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a big part of it as well.
Yeah. He said, We got to do it. It's too fun not to. He was interested in seeing the dinosaurs attacking the mainland and believed the audiences would enjoy the San Diego rampage. Initially, Spielberg wanted such a scene to be saved for a third film, but later decided to add to the second one when he realized he probably wouldn't direct another. The sequence is similar to an attack scene involving Brontosaurus in London in The Lost World, which is the Arthur Conan Doyle novel of the same name that sort of inspired this one. Coep liked the idea of the dinosaur rampage, but acknowledged that rewriting the script so close to filming was, and this is in quote marks, pretty hectic. Especially because it coincided with his wife giving birth. The first draft of the completed third act was handed over to Spielberg a week after he got the request. Do you want to tell me, Chris, that scene was written in a week? Because that whole sequence? Because it seems like it was.
Yep, that again, it tracks.
Yeah. Although it would go on through some more revisions, that was pretty much what ended up happening to the finished product. Co-op apparently across the whole production, the whole process, pre-production, wrote 9 drafts of the film before the filming began. But yeah, if he's getting notes like completely change the third act to be a thing that you're going to have to really work hard to contrive and do it in 4 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever before we start filming, not shocking that maybe the last act of this movie turned out to be a bit of a mess.
Not shocking at all.
No. Yeah, what a disaster. What a bad choice. Anyway, on casting, Spielberg met Vanessa Chester, who would ultimately play what's the character's name in this? Kelly. Malcolm's daughter. He met her at the premiere of a film called The Little Princess, in which she appeared. Chester later recalled, as I was signing an autograph for him, he told me one day he'd put me in a film. Spielberg met with Chester the following year to discuss this movie and cast her in it. While that was happening, the producers actually had proposed Mila Kunis to play Kelly, the daughter of Ian Malcolm, but Spielberg had already made that choice and chosen Vanessa Lee Chester. She apparently knew very little about the movie. She didn't even know Jeff Goldblum was playing her dad until she overheard someone at a wardrobe fitting explaining that. She was never given a full script. Incredible.
Jesus.
Her performance
Wow.
is as good as it is, considering she wasn't given a full script and had no idea what was happening.
That's madness. She must have really wanted to work with them.
Yeah. Gary Oldman was offered the role of Peter Ludlow, but turned it down due to scheduling conflicts. Look, I love Gary Oldman, and I'm sure he would have been absolutely amazing in this movie. He's literally one of the finest actors working today. But I really love the performance we get, Alice Howard. So, no, thank you. I'm not whipping out my Rick and Morty portal gun to go to the dimension where Gary Oldman did this movie, if I'm being honest.
No, I think especially given the state of things of this production, I out of respect for the performances that we get, then no, I don't want to see any portal gun action.
Yeah, agreed. Spielberg originally approached someone called Juliette Binoche about playing Sarah Harding. She had put out, I don't know how true this is, and I tried to verify this, and I usually would just cut something if I can't completely verify it, but it's so good I couldn't not include it. So he talked to her about playing Sarah Harding, and apparently she replied that she would appear in the movie only if she could play the dinosaur. It's the best thing ever. Yeah, I'll be in Jurassic Park 2. Can I play a dinosaur? No. All right, guess I'm not in Jurassic Park 2 then.
Fair play. I can see why you included that, even though it's unverified.
Like, I can't tell if she's just like basically that was her way of saying no, I don't want to do the movie. Like yeah, sure. If I can play the, it's like a sarcastic like dismissal, or if like she's just an insane person that wanted to play a dinosaur. Like, do you remember when we had that thing where Michael Jackson pitched playing Professor X in old white guy makeup?
Yeah.
That's what I can't decide if it's Michael Jackson pitching to play Professor X in old white guy makeup, or if it's a sarcastic dismissal of being in the sequel to Jurassic Park. Either way, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, either way, it's great. Yeah, fair play.
Instead, of course, the part famously went to Julianne Moore. Funnily enough, both women had declined playing Dr. Sattler in the first Jurassic Park. So there you go. We already mentioned this, but I'll just repeat it here just for the sake of continuity. Julianne Moore admitted later she did the movie for two reasons. One, to pay off the exorbitant divorce settlement that had been awarded to her ex-husband, and two, to work with Spielberg. She's admitted many times since that she enjoyed herself tremendously making this movie. So she had a good time. Everyone wins. I'm on board with that. Now, here's a fun one. Spielberg attended an early screening for Swingers in order to give approval for the use of the Jaws theme in that movie. He was so impressed by Vince Vaughn, he offered him a part in this movie without needing to screen test. That's crazy. Like, we've had situations in this. We two or three podcasts ago, we did Hercules. Danny DeVito refused to screen test. And they're like, right, we're going to go a different direction. Now, eventually they ended up back at Danny DeVito because he was born to play that role. But, like, that's how seriously studios take the importance of these screen tests, particularly back then. Probably less so now if you're a big name. But, yeah, that's crazy to me that they just were like, yeah, Spielberg says so. So he's in the movie.
But he's brilliant in it.
He is. No, it was the right choice. Spielberg wanted to work with his longtime cinematographer Dean Cundy. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. To return for this film after his work with him, over many others. But unfortunately, he was preparing to direct Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. So Spielberg had to choose Janusz Kaminski instead. Kaminski had worked with Spielberg on Schindler's List, and he felt that's why one of the reasons this movie ends up with a darker, sort of more artistic look to its predecessor, leading to a more elegant and rich approach focused on the contrast and shadow. I guess visually it is an interest. It is distinct from the first Jurassic Park, to its credit. It's like darker.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
For the filming itself, they didn't travel quite as far afield. For this production, you'll remember they did a bunch of shoots in Hawaii last time. Mainly this stuff was shot in California's various state parks. Apparently a bunch of them were done in Northern California. Then a little bit of shooting in San Diego. And then most of the rest of the movie was then shot at sound stages at Universal Studios. So it was very much an American production. There was talk. They announced a small 5-day shoot in New Zealand, but they cancelled that in the end. It didn't end up happening. I think they did return to Kauai as a second unit to shoot the opening sequence, the little girl wandering off and getting sort of attacked by the compies. But other than that, everything else was shot in the US. For this movie, they did make 2 models of the T-Rexes. They each weighed 9 tons. So due to their weight, the crew constructed sets around them rather than moving them onto sets. Yeah, I'll fucking bet. 9 tons each. That's crazy. Vanessa Lee Chester joked that she kept begging the filmmakers to give her a stunt. Oh, Chris, I forgot about this. I've been saving this. So I've had this in my mind this entire podcast, Chris. This is trivia just for you. Okay? Solely for you.
That's exciting.
Vanessa Lee Chester joked...
Get ready to find out how many pairs of glasses Daniel Radcliffe wore in Harry Potter, people.
No, that's not in here this week, genuinely. I might say it at the end for funsies now you've reminded me, but no. Vanessa Lee Chester joked that she'd been begging the filmmakers to give her a stunt. She thinks that's where the entire gymnastics scene came from. She explained, I was just like, please give me a stunt scene, give me something crazy to do. I don't want to just be a kid in danger in this movie. I want to do something badass. I remember begging them to let me fall. She's like, I don't need any stunt gear. I fall all the time. Just let me do it. I'm 13. So that when I saw that come through in the script, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because I actually used to do gymnastics. And so I was like, that's dope. I think it's incredible. I think it's really fun. So she's implying that her pestering to do a stunt is the reason the whole gymnastics knocking a dinosaur over end up in the movie. What do we think, Chris?
I think she seems like a great kid then. I'm sure she's a wonderful woman now. But I think if that's true, they shouldn't have listened to her. They shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, there's 2 things about that, and I think you sort of very politely hinted at that. If that's true, I think both of us, knowing a little bit about writing and production and understanding that something like a stunt like that has to be planned weeks in advance. And you have to know that you're going to do it and implant the reference to her gymnastics earlier in the movie too, making the whole thing feel like something that was probably there from the script stages rather than something added last minute. So we're both, I suppose, probably thinking that it's unlikely that the stunt was added for that reason. But doesn't preclude that from being true completely. And also, like as you said, I'm glad she got to do it because it sounded like she really wanted to do it. So,
oh yeah, fair play. And like I said, I've presented a world where I wouldn't have minded that happening in the movie. Sure. It's just the inconsistencies in the tone.
Yeah. Very quickly, special effects wise, we didn't talk about the special effects of this movie. I'd say they mostly hold up. I don't think the dinosaurs move quite as well in this one as the last one. We talked a lot about how they had a lot of weight to them in the first movie. In this one, I feel like sometimes they are a little floaty, and I'll be honest with you, I think we might be missing Phil Tippett, who did not work on this movie, and he did sort of stop motion that fed into the computers, and this time their movements are entirely animated in the computers. We didn't talk about this last week either, but Stan Winston and his team were responsible for designing the dinosaurs' look and producing the animatronics and the physical ones that were on set. Stan Winston, legendary special effects artist. If you don't know about Stan Winston's work, just Google him. You've probably seen hundreds of movies that man worked on. An absolute genius, including the first Jurassic Park. We didn't talk about him last week just because we got very into the weeds with the Phil Tippett situation because he was sort of fired because of the CGI and then brought back in, and that was all very interesting. But just some credit where credit is due. And this movie uses a lot more puppets than the first one, it feels like. The entire compy attack on that guy, tons of puppet work in that sequence, and it looks amazing. They look really good. So yeah, I know that Stan Winston's team worked a lot to try and keep the dinosaurs as accurate to like paleontological facts. They were trying to keep them as accurate to what paleontologists say about them. They also painted the dinosaurs, and also made choices to make some of them different colors in this movie, because it is believed that with many dinosaur species there were slightly different color variations between male and female. So this movie, you might notice there's raptors with maybe a little bit more blue in their tone, and that's because that's indicating, because in the first movie they were all one gender. Now we have multiple genders, so that's why that's the case. Apparently as well, the CGI teams, ILM, they went to Marine World, Africa, USA, to videotape elephants, reptiles, and rhinos to determine how to make dinos appear more like living animals. The way the flesh moves is lit, the weight. It still doesn't quite work as well as the first one, but I will say that, like, pretty much, it's also pretty seamless though. This movie doesn't have any really ropey special effects. It's still a Spielberg movie. A lot of the same people that worked on the first one. It holds up really well. We didn't talk about it during the main review, but just wanted to bring that up. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it works. It works brilliantly, and absolutely should have been part of the main review. So I'm glad we got to discuss the combination here, and just in general, we didn't, like you say, we didn't really talk about it at all. But the dinosaurs, it all still look great, as you've just said. It all still looks brilliant.
Yeah. So actually, I've got a quote here from Spielberg I forgot about. So although the technology hadn't advanced much since the release of the first film, Spielberg noted the artistry of all the creative computer people had advanced. There's better detail, better lighting, better muscle tone and movement in the animals. When a dinosaur transfers weight from his left side to his right side, the whole movement of fat and sinew is smoother, more physiologically correct. The dinosaurs all had servo control for facial movements as well for the puppet ones. I sort of agree with that. I still don't think that works quite as well as what they did last movie, but it's with the sort of stop motion turned into computer imagery, but still worked really well. Apparently the compy attack sequence as well, used, because it was primarily puppets, a lot of them apparently were really simple and used things just like fishing line and magnets to create the effect of them like pecking at him and stuff, because what Winston was saying in one of the quotes I read was like, oh well, they needed like really specific movements, and if you want me to just create a puppet that's going to do multiple things across a movie because it's just going to be one, it's not going to do those movements all very well. It's going to be like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of puppet. He's like, but with the compy scene, each puppet was made for a particular shot with a particular movement, which means you could really focus on making it move realistically to do that. So that was cool as well, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons that the compies look so good. So mobility was essential for the scene in which the T-Rexes attack the trailer. Working on a stage set at Universal, the Winston crew gleefully rammed T-Rex rigs into the vehicle over and over again. Someone called Shane Mahan, who worked on the special effects, said, "I think out of everything on this movie, we had the most fun smashing up the RV with the two T-Rexes. At first, we were hesitant, thinking we had to be careful with the rigs, but it got to a point where we were just like, to hell with it. Let's just demolish the trailer with the actual T-Rex rig. That scene wasn't faked. Those T-Rexes were really slamming into that thing, breaking the glass and shaking it. I think the scene works so well because we went for it. You can tell something truly violent is happening."
He's not wrong.
No, he's not wrong. And on the subject of the RV attack, apparently the most difficult shot in the entire movie was the single take where the camera follows Richard Schiff's character through the trailer, Eddie, and throwing the rope down. The shot required a 26-foot crane arm and a dolly track built into the stage, but apparently the camera kept losing focus once it got inside the trailer because it would interfere with there was something in the electronic in the vehicle that was interfering with their ability to control it. Plus, the artificial rain was getting into the camera because the deflectors were failing, and the lens kept fogging up on multiple takes. So after 15 failed takes, they were basically close to giving up on that shot altogether. But then they found a device that they could mount to the camera that would remotely focus it on a timer. Ultimately, it took 9 hours, and by the end, they had 3 takes they deemed usable. I don't know how many takes they did total. By 15 they will really give up, but they ended up with 3 usable ones. So I'm guessing that means they did another 4 or 5 takes even after that. Just yikes. That sounds horrible. That sounds unpleasant. Like the original movie, you can always rely on Steven Spielberg to bring a movie in on budget and potentially on or under schedule. Jurassic Park's shoot finished days ahead of schedule. This one finished 5 days ahead of schedule as well. They completed it in 69 days. It was scheduled for 74. You gotta love that man.
How does he do it? That's bad.
Consummate professional, Steven Spielberg. Love it. The SS Venture, which is the ship that transports the Tyrannosaurus to San Diego, its title is a reference to King Kong, who gets transported to New York City on a ship also called the SS Venture. That is the franchise's second reference to the classic movie. The gate in the first movie is modelled on the Skull Island gate. And that's what Malcolm points out in the first movie. Who you got in there? King Kong. So both movies have a small King Kong reference. That is fine, I guess. We've already covered that. Don't need to cover that again. Malcolm accuses Peter Ludlow of, in the mansion, of lying about the facts surrounding the deaths of 3 people during the course of the events in Jurassic Park. This implies no one knows what happened to Ned, because 4 people died in that movie. Roy Arnold, Robert Muldoon, Donald Gennaro, the lawyer, and then Needry. If there's 3 deaths that are being covered up as far as Malcolm is aware, that means people maybe assume that Needry did indeed get away and has vanished. That was interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed how the family names, I think they referenced the Gennaros, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
By name? Yeah, so I enjoyed... I couldn't remember who that was, but I liked that Easter egg and attention to detail for fans.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. So, there's a point in the movie where a bus crashes into a video store. Did you note the posters, Chris?
The posters, I had to rewind, and I've been waiting for this to come up, because my assumption was that it would. I had to rewind, pause, and be like... Is it a poster for Jack? Because the word Jack is clearly visible. It's clearly Robin Williams, and the font and color choices are similar to the Jack logo. And then I was like, but is he holding the other kids? And then I'm like, no, it says Jack and the Beanstalk. So that's presumably a fake movie, but they've sort of is it a knowing nod to Jack? So yeah, if you could tell me what the fuck is going on with those film posters, I would be very grateful, Dan, because I resisted looking it up.
Yeah, so there's two of them, and they're both sort of hilariously connected to films we've reviewed on here. So the first one is, as you pointed out, Jack. It's the poster for the movie Jack, but they didn't have the rights for that, so they've like adjusted it so it's Jack and the Beanstalks, but even Beanstalks is spelt wrong. It's like Ben Stacks. And yeah, they've just sort of like adjusted the poster so it's not that movie. The poster next to it, Chris, appears to be Arnold Schwarzenegger as King Lear. Now, you may be thinking, that's random. How is that connected to
something to do with Last Action Hero?
You are exactly right. In Last Action Hero, as we see the library of movies that the kid watches with that Arnold Schwarzenegger character in them, one of them he watches and imagines himself in at the beginning of the movie, I believe. He has like a dream sequence, is King Lear starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it is a little reference to Last Action Hero, which came out the same year as the original Jurassic Park and was expected to be a competing blockbuster, but obviously flopped massively and was not. So there you go.
Which is a shame. I often think about that movie. I enjoyed it. I thought the other day I might rewatch that movie at some point.
Do you think? Yeah, I mean, it's it's a funnish movie. I was disappointed, but I wonder if going back into it now, knowing it doesn't hold up to my childhood memories, would I enjoy it more? But I don't know. I fear watching that movie again.
I think that's a good example of what I've been talking about. For me, that movie was good, dumb fun. Like, right, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Just two tiny bits of dino shit this week. We don't have a big leaps of mounds of dino information. But the vocalization of the juvenile tyrannosaur was actually the noise of a baby camel crying for its mother. So I'm not going to question how they got that sound, by the way.
Wow. Yep, that's slightly horrifying, but okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping they got that by just witnessing something happening out in the wild and they captured it rather than actually separating the two. But there you go. Roland Tembo, Peter Postlethwaite's character, refers to the Tyrannosaurus Rex as the greatest predator that ever lived. Now, while the Jurassic Park movies have depicted the T-Rex as an active hunter, this apparently has been the subject of decade-long debate amongst paleontologists and various people in the world of studying dinosaurs. So basically, there are two theories. The supporters of the poacher-scavenger theory maintain the T-Rex's arms were too short to hold down prey, and that it would not have been able to have run as fast as any of its prey due to its bulk. So it probably didn't actively hunt living things, but instead was more of a scavenger, finding dead things and eating them. Additionally, its excellent sense of smell would have served out to sniff already deceased prey over long distances. Supporters of the more active predator theory point at the fact that the T-Rex has depth perception, a trait seen in most predators, so they can estimate the distance to prey, implies that the T-Rex was a more active hunter. There have also been fossilized skeletons of other dinosaurs found with healed bite marks that appear to match T-Rexes on them, which would indicate the T-Rex maybe did hunt things that were alive rather than dead. So it continues to be a debate. We don't know the answer. Was the T-Rex a weird little scavenger? Did he chase after stuff himself and was an active hunter? We don't know. Maybe a little of both. Who knows? But I think it's interesting that the movie leans on the active hunter thing, despite the fact we don't actually know that to be the case.
This seems a good moment because it may be the case that there are people listening to this that are big Jurassic Park fans that are doing the thing that I do sometimes, and I haven't got a problem with that. I'm not moaning. Great to have you on board for just these episodes. I'll often really love a thing enough to listen to a podcast discuss that thing, whether I listen to the rest of the podcast or not. And if you fall into that category of being a huge Jurassic Park fan because you really like dinosaurs, apologies, because Dan and I don't know enough about dinosaurs to fill this podcast with dino discussion or dino stuff. Obviously, there was a fair bit last week. Dan's just done some there, but just if you're here for dinosaurs, apologies if Dan and I don't have the ability to deliver that. But I think I speak for both of us when I say we think it would be more annoying to get stuff wrong. So that's why.
Yes. I would agree. I would thoroughly agree with that statement. Yeah, we don't know enough. We're big old dummies. So, Chris, let's talk box office before we wrap this bad boy up. So the last one was made on, what was it, $63 million, and it returned just shy of $1 billion. It was like 970 something million. This movie was made on a $73 million budget, so a little bit more. Not a massive amount more, but a little bit more. It returned $619 million at the worldwide box office. Not quite the extraordinary hit the first one was, but on that budget, that is a massive return. So once again, Jurassic Park absolutely killing it at the box office. So do we think this is just people being wary of sequels, the drop-off from the first to the second? Or do you think it may be partly word of mouth too, a little of both?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because it's so hard to judge how powerful word of mouth would have been back then. I'm going to go ahead and blame the appalling title. I don't think that would have helped. I think maybe the fact that it would have been clear not everyone was back wouldn't have helped.
Yeah.
I think a combination of those things, but still a great return, still a lot of money, so fair play.
Yeah, I would agree. It's time for everyone's favourite segment, Chris. It's Cars Exist. So, Ian Malcolm is driving a 1969 Pontiac Le Mans Custom S. That's the car they used to transport the T-Rex at the end of the movie. Nice car. Cool car. So the cars they use when they're sort of going to the island, they've got the trailers and they've got the cars and the high-hide that they go with, the equipment that our team that we're following go with. The cars are a Mercedes ML 320. Now, these were obviously given as part of a marketing collaboration with the production. So originally there was going to be 3 SUVs that they were given. Oh, wait, 1 second. So initially there were going to be 3 given to them, modified for this trip to Isle Sorna. But unfortunately, in the end, they chose to just limit it down to 2, because I think they were looking at the number of characters and were like, there's 3 cars. Are these guys always just separate driving when they want to go somewhere? We've got 4 characters, 3 cars. We're going to have to separate the cast a lot. So they pared it down to just 2 cars. The third one did get made, but never got used in the movie, and is now on display at the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart, Germany. So there you go.
Oh, nice.
But as a result of the collaboration with Mercedes on these ML 320s, Jeff Goldblum was gifted a W163 for free as a result of the tie-in. And that was his personal car, and the most recent evidence I have of him using it is as recent as 2011.
Fair play to Goldblum. Don't mind any of that.
Yeah, and I've just looked it up. It's not like I was assuming it was some sort of really fancy, top down. It's like a family vehicle. It's like a 4-door.
Yeah, and if he's been using it for this long,
that's like a proper sensible car they gave him. I really assumed. It was his own personal vehicle, at least up until 2011. That's amazing. Very quickly, though, Chris, a few little bits of exist. Bikes exist. Ding, ding. Little bell.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, that's good. The motorcycles use... Oh, no, bikes exist isn't cycle bikes. It's motorbikes, isn't it? So... The motorcycles used by the InGen hunters during the dinosaur herding scene were Italian-made Cagiva Canyon 500s. Sure. We didn't really talk about that scene, by the way. It's a fun scene. I like that the guy keeps making up names for the dinosaurs. He's like, catch the Friar Tuck one. That's kind of fun.
Can I just say, I gotta, sorry, because this is separate. I'm going back slightly here because I thought I was smug, Dan. I was being clever. The thing about the sensible car and Jeff Goldblum and all that sort of stuff. So I was trying to be a bit clever, and I was like, let's look up when he had children, if he's got children. And because what I wanted to do was go, well, Dan, he had a child born in 96 or 97, or do you know what I mean? And go, maybe that's why he got gifted
Jeff Goldblum have a harem? Isn't he got 1,000 children?
No, he's got 2 born in 2015 and 2017, respectively,
right?
according to Wikipedia.
I wonder.
Wow, way off with that. I was way off.
Misused the word harem there, but my point being, that's surprising. Maybe I just assumed that the character in this movie that seems to have lots of different children across, like with different relationships, maybe I just applied that to Goldblum. Maybe at some point my brain fused the characters' backstories. Well, there you go. That's good for him. But yeah, it's a really nice. It's a nice family vehicle. I looked it up. It's a first generation of M-class mid-sized SUVs, launched in '97. It was built on a body-on-frame chassis and offered permanent four-wheel drive. It was known for its durability and reliability, Chris.
Well, there we go. Hot damn.
It's time for RVs exist. Also, I guess. The RV in this that gets smashed up is a 1997 Fleetwood Southwind Storm RV. It was depicted the sort of mobile lab they use in this. Several trailers were created for filming. Obviously, some to be destroyed for fun. Later on, as the special effects guy gleefully told us. And then the final one, Chris. Cameras exist. Click, click. Oh, that was good. Very good.
Thank you.
Nick's camera is a Nikon F5 SLR. And his camcorder is a JCV GR DV-M1, which he keeps in a Portabrace PC303 bag. And if anyone wondering, what the fuck are you talking about, Dad? What is any of this? I just love it when you go to the trivia section of a movie and they tell you the make and model of a thing in the movie for no reason at all. Like, that's interesting trivia. Amuses me. And we've been doing the jokes so long now. It's crazy.
I think the reason we love it is because you got to assume that there's not someone that loves that camera watching every film in case it turns up. So instead, someone that loves that camera is watching Jurassic Park, the Lost World Jurassic Park one day. It's fucking weird. He's watching that film one day and sees that camera and gets excited and jumps up and comes across to make a note about it on the internet. And that's joyous. That's fucking brilliant. That's my kind of joy. That's great.
I always picture it as like, you know, the thing from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's like pointing at the screen, the meme.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I always imagine. So anyway, that's everything. We did it, Chris. We did it. It's not a good movie. Don't watch it. Maybe just watch the trailer scene where they all get pushed off the cliff. That scene's great.
The dinosaurs attacking the camp is also good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not worth sitting through the whole movie, though. There's nothing in this movie good enough to warrant putting yourself through it, unfortunately, which is a real shame.
No, definitely not.
Because I think there are lots of good ideas and lots of good things potentially in it. It just does not come together at all, which is a shame. It isn't the sum of its parts. Yeah.
But presumably, Dan, because I believe it's your choice, we get to find out how Jurassic Park 3 compares.
Yeah, we do. Well, next week we're doing Jurassic Park 3. I can't fathom this movie. I have vague memories of it. I remember 2 or 3 very specific scenes from the movie, but the rest of it is currently like sort of shrouded in like a cloud for my brain. So I'm really excited to sort of like see if it's going to be one of those movies where once it starts, it's going to start coming back to me. And I'm going to start being like, oh, and then this happens. You know, one of those movies. I that's always fun when you have that experience. So, look, I loved it as a kid, but Christ, I loved all these movies as a kid. I was a dummy. I thought this movie was good as a kid. So,
I think if I'd have watched it as a kid, I'd have felt the same. Honestly, genuinely.
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe the third one. Do you think the third one could end up being better than this one, despite its reputation? Like, at least still more consistent, like, functional story.
Yes, because if it's coherent and functional, then, I might forgive it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Joe Johnston's like a pretty, like, as like, director for a third movie in a franchise goes, Joe Johnston's, like, a pretty good get, right? It's not like they handed it off to some sort of jobber director that, like, comes in and makes those straight-to-DVD movies and, like, you know, it's just some sort of, like, almost like anonymous guy that's just there to yell action. Like, Joe Johnston's a director with a vision, so we'll see, I guess. yeah, he's we'll see how it turns out. But that's in a week's time. If you want to hear that immediately, dear listener, and you're listening to this on like Spotify or iTunes or any of those platforms, well, good news. Head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/nothing-but-static, and you can listen to it for right now for as little as $1 a month. Or you could just pay the $1, listen to it, and then cancel, so you don't have to pay another $1.
Yep. We still get your sweet, sweet dollar. We're okay with that. Oh, no, wait, you don't have to pay. Nah. Leave it enough to pay us the $1, and then just don't keep paying us the $1.
Yeah. You have to pay the first $1. You have to pay the first $1, I believe. So yeah, pay the first $1, have a listen, and then you can cancel. That's fine. Oh, they'll also give you access to like Nothing But Claps, which is a fun podcast. And then we did Nothing But Lyrics, which is a podcast where we did where we made fun of song lyrics. We need to bring that back. I love doing that. I miss that. So at some point we need to bring that back. But anyway, I was thinking the other day, you know how we did the Rewind reviews, where we went through all of the films about the boy and it's with the magic, the franchise that we don't name anymore. I was thinking we do a Nothing But Lyrics version of that, where we do the entire self-titled Wheatus album, because I listened to that the other day because a Wheatus song came on in like a randomizer thing, and I was like, these lyrics are insane. So I went and put the entire first album on, and those lyrics are fucking insane.
Yeah, some of them are offensive.
But also just like fucking weird, like just senseless, like just like someone hit randomized words and just like mixed them all up. Like it's really bizarre. There is so much just gibberish in that album. It's great.
Maybe the way to do it is we try and do what we're doing with Doctor Who reviews. This, we have a firm, like in Doctor Who's case, 20-minute cap. We have a firm, right? Yeah. This is how long we've got to talk about this. Mm-hmm. Maybe that will encourage us to make us feel more confident to bolt them on to another recording, because we set that cap on it. Yeah.
I think that's fair. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, look, I've just called up one of the lyrics here, just as a little tease, guys. This is the chorus to a song called Sunshine. I was a jerk. I did the work for somebody else's dream. I took the chance. I lost my pants for somebody else's dream tonight. The fuck is he talking about?
Oh, but I think the problem is, and I can't remember if it's, I think some of the stuff I've listened back to and been like, fucking hell, that's offensive, is I think on the second album, but I do think there is a danger with the Wheatus thing that we'll find ourselves in territories of like, oh no.
Yeah, maybe. Right. Maybe we pre-vet one or two of the songs and maybe make sure we're not doing anything too. I don't even notice the lyrics though, like when I listen to them, because the songs are catchy. Like, so, yeah. Oh yeah, the chorus for the song Truffles is, when your pencil neck breaks, when your bird chest caves in, I'm gonna win.
Yeah. Truffles is the opener, and I mean the intro to that first chorus is because he's talking about the guy's mum, because I saw her outside sucking dick in the bathroom of the bus of an Iron Maiden cover band.
It's an amazing, like, they're just insanity. Like, just the lyrics are just absolute madness. It's like, it is like they just got an AI to write them, but this is long before AI existed. This is the year 2000. So anyway, I don't know why, but I went back to it the other day. I was like, we need to explore this.
Well, I think Dan, not to do Wheatus's promotional work for them, but I'm pretty sure they're about to go on a tour playing that album. If you wanna hear the album,
yeah, I must admit, in my quick googling the other day when that happened, I did notice that, and I was like, well, that's a tempting tour to go on. I know, young Dan would very much enjoy me to do that. I never got to see them live back in the day. Anyway, irrelevant. If you want to support the podcast, I'm just going to bring this right back. You can get us in a few different ways. You can keep listening. You can tell a friend, you can interact and review the podcast on the platform of choice. That tells that platform you enjoyed it. It makes it more likely to share it with others. Of course, we already mentioned you can support us through the Patreon. You can head over to YouTube, youtube.com/nothingbutstatic UK, where you can like the posts of these podcasts we do on there, or comment on them. And speaking of commenting, if you have any thoughts, access to the Patreon gives you access to our Discord, where you can, there's a small community there that we chat we're sort of mildly active in. And then like the email address is mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you have thoughts about Jurassic Park or just the lyrics of the band Wheatus. You got your own thoughts on the lyrics of the 2000s inexplicably successful band Wheatus in the UK. They were massive over here for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, but fair play to them because they have eked a career out of that success back then.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I really admire Wheatus's resilience.
Yeah, agreed. That leads us nicely to the end. Come back in a week's time for Jurassic Park 3 because why not? It's going to be fun. Alan, I'm so excited about that, Alan. I love that.
I'm trying to find out. Oh, okay, so it looks like tickets are about £30.
There you go.
But we'd have to get to. There's no London date, which is interesting.
I thought there was.
My assumption. So there is a London date listed. Now that London date listed is Wembley Arena, which will probably make you go, Dan, huh? as it did me, because they've still got a career and that's cool, but that seems mad. But the Wembley Arena show is with Bowling for Soup. So
I love Bowling for Soup. I love Bowling for Soup.
So it's Bowling for Soup, Wheatus, and Punk Rock Academy. So my assumption is there's no Wheatus tour date in London because sometimes support acts, there's a rule that they can't book a show in the same city. Right. So that's my assumption there.
But I also absolutely adore. I also absolutely adore Bowling for Soup. So maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's December is the only thing about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. You never know. We'll report back.
Sounded
Guys.
threatening. Dan might be moving again. Like that's that. Well, it's December, so you might not be around. Sounded more threatening than I intended it to.
Yeah, yeah. With that context, yeah, I might be moving again. But anyway, look.
Dan, sorry. Can I say one more thing about this, Dan?
Go on.
I know, but this is going to make it even more tempting for you. At that show, because I don't think Wheatus' support slot will be enough to play the album in full, so it might just be a support slot. But that show is part of a tour where Bowling for Soup are playing all of A Hangover You Don't Deserve.
Ah, that's the best one. That's the best album. Oh man! All right. We've got a.
Oh no! Wait, that's an old tour they did with Wheatus. What the fuck are they doing at Wembley then? Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, this is going on way too long now.
Oh, actually, maybe drunk. Is Drunk Enough to Dance not the better Bowling for Soup album? Actually, I like both. I like both very much.
Apparently, it's just all the hits. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. I want to hear Emily. I want to hear I Don't Want to Rock. I want to hear all the Girls All the Bad Guys One. I want to hear 1985. I want to hear Trucker Hat. I want to hear Almost. I love, mate. I'm a Bowling for Soup fan. I love Bowling for Soup.
Well, look, if you're still around in December, mate, Bowling for Soup and Wheatus at Wembley Arena.
Oh, man, great. Bring it on. Anyway, the music of my youth. Arguably bad music, but shut up. What did you like when you were young? Also probably bad music.
Yeah, I think there's probably. I'm going to take a punt and say there's a crossover here with our listeners and shit like this.
We seem to have skewed in terms of our listeners. We seem to have skewed a generation younger in terms of people who listen to our podcasts because of Steven University. So as a result, I think often I find a small gulf in the weird shit we're into. Well, I get a lot of people. So the people who listen to us because they found us through Steven University are sometimes very confused or are not even aware of the movies we're covering on Rewind Reviews. I occasionally get comments like, I've never heard of this movie, and it's like a reasonably big movie from the 90s, but because it's from the 90s, they'd never heard of it, and I'm like, oh, I feel old. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. This is a really weird tangent we've got on, and we definitely didn't have the time for a tangent today, but there you go. That's what's happened.
Nope.
We love you all. We'll see you in a week's time for that. for Jurassic Park 3 and an update on our Wheatus Bowling for Soup situation. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to know in a week whether I'm going to that or not. But anyway, thanks everyone. We love you. I'm handing over to Chris because he puts this thing out of its misery, as I have now taken to saying every week.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Dillon.
And this review has been rewound.